Vasquez, and I am a senior at Northwestern Evening High School. Prince George's County has prepared me for academic success. This year I'm taking AP Government and Politics, also English 11 and 12. My plans for the futures are to attend Georgetown Law School and major in law. And my long-term goal is to become a lawyer. And thanks to Prince George's County schools, I'm ready for college. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome you to the first 2012 Prince George's County Board of Education meeting. Some highlights this evening will include the FY 2013 budget, the retirement incentive program, the renaming of the Francis Fuchs Media Center to the Rita Menea Media Center. Please keep checking www.pgcps.org for upcoming Board of Education meetings and events. And now, the January 5th Board of Education meeting will begin.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the January 5th, 2012 board meeting for Prince George's County Board of Education. Before I begin, please turn off your wireless communications as they tend to interfere with the taping of the meeting. Ms. Waller, would you please lead us into the board prayer and pledge of allegiance?
Which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's too much going on.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Ms. Thompson, call the roll, please.
Mr. Armwood? Ms. Beck?
Present.
Ms. Boston?
Present.
Mr. Barrows?
Present.
Ms. Eubanks?
Present.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Waller?
Present.
Ms. Jackson?
Present.
Ms. Higgins?
Present.
Ms. Jacobs?
Here. Thank you. Colleagues, prior to adopting the agenda for January 5th, 2012, please note the following changes. Under agenda item 6.2, an outline of the superintendent's recommendation for boundary improvements has been added to the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the January 5th, 2012 board meeting agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we add this item actually back to the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. Colleagues, may I please have a motion to approve the November 9th, 2011 board meeting minutes? Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Ms. Eubanks. It's been properly moved and second that we approve the board meeting minutes for November 9th, 2011. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. At this time, we will have a news break entitled Students Paint Prince George's for the Ages.
What are you proudest of on this?
I'm proud of just us, like me and my fellow classmates, you know, portraying Laurel in a good way, showing everybody that this is where we live at, this is our school, showing everybody this is Laurel.
Student Troy Wilmore's pride in Laurel matched that of 141 other Prince George's High School seniors as they grandly unveiled 12 cleverly detailed murals that painted to depict the history of Prince George's County. At a ceremony at the Mall of Prince George's in Hyattsville, where the murals will hang in perpetuity, the young artists, their teachers, and local officials celebrated a project that had been years in the making.
We waited a long time. A lot of work has come from our students, the administration, the staff, but most of all from our business partners here at the Mall at Prince George's. And we've just been in this together. And this event and this work is a reflection of the entire county. It's not just this district, but from around the county, and we're just excited that this will have a lasting place in the history of the mall at Prince George's.
It's the evolution of the county and the evolution of their school system as well, and the fact that these magnificent talents are displayed here at the Mall of Prince George's. And you just look at the faces of the students and their parents and the business people and just individuals who were just visiting the mall, and you look at their responses to these beautiful murals that shows Prince George's County in the past and as it is today. It is just a sight to see, Dave. We're tremendously proud of the talents of our students.
Those wonderful pieces of art that have transformed a mall into a gallery are a travelogue of gorgeous Prince George's County, then and now. From the mural of Bowie with its familiar racetrack and railroad, to Largo's with its timeline of recreation, from Watkins Park's antique carousel to today's water slide at Six Flags, to the surrealistic piano keyboard in Suplin's mural that takes viewers from rural colonial life to the county's premier performing arts school today. The joy of the young artists and the fruits of their historical homework are evident.
This right here is the old Laurel High School. It's currently at Main Street, Laurel Boys and Girls Club. This is a new auditorium that was built for Laurel. This is a racetrack that we designed because back in the day in Laurel, they used to have Laurel Racetrack, and it was very interesting to me.
This is a big night.
It is.
First of all, tell me how you feel tonight after all the hard work you did.
I feel great. Great.
Yeah?
It's so much joy to even see our mural, come out in the public place like this.
As parents continued to snap pictures that night, musicians played and mall stores welcomed their new neighbors. The artists were still reflecting on what they'd done and what their mural's legacies might be.
To finish it quicker, like somebody would work on the sky and then somebody would do one of the schools, and so we try not to, we try to overlap, we try to wait till they tried and did this, did that. If you have more to say, you can come in at any time.
Yeah, we started obviously with our school because, WISE, the center of the show. So we started on WISE. We had one of our students actually start working on WISE. And then actually what we did, we have two other students actually draw the other sections, the cabin and the plantation. And then to finish it off, because WISE was already dry, and then we moved over to the courthouse. And then we finally finished with our next door neighbor, Barack Obama Elementary.
Now tell me, this is going to hang here for years and years. You'll be long gone from Dr. Henry Wise. So many people are going to see this. What is the story you want them to take away? What do you hope people remember after they see this?
I want them to remember all the positive things about, Prince George's County. I want them to remember all of its history, all the things that make it what it is now.
Congratulations to all the student artists and all who made their work possible for painting a picture of Prince George's County that will forever make us proud. For Channels 96 and 38, this is Dave Zarin reporting.
Thank you for that news break, and that was wonderful art by our students. If you get a chance to look at Dr. Hite's office, he has some marvelous art also done by our students, and it just speaks volumes about the talent of our kids. At this time, I want to welcome you to the first board meeting for 2012, and also take this time to hope that you all have had a happy holiday season, and we look forward to a prosperous new year in many respects with regard to the school district. We've had budget constraints over the past few years. We know that we're not out of the woods just yet, but we're looking forward to digging our way out as best we can. We need community support this year the same way we did last year. I think we probably made records in Annapolis with the amount of parents and community members who went to Annapolis with us to advocate on behalf of the school district. So we look forward to your continued support in that regard. I also want to recognize Mr. Jonathan Harris, who is our former student board member. I didn't have an opportunity to say hello to you, but he is here, I guess, visiting from the cold Wisconsin. Welcome and thank you for coming out with us tonight. I know you're going to also, you have some, you're also one of our speakers. And probably the greatest news I could tell you tonight that really stands out for me and really speaks volumes about how we need to update ourselves on how well Prince George's County Public School students do. And I often say we have to own what's ours, deal with what's ours, but at the end of the day, we have to give kudos to where it's due. And our board member, Faith Jackson, has been accepted to Harvard University. And so while it's a little bit unusual, I'm going to give some deference to her, 1.5 minutes, to say anything you feel you want to say. And when you got that news, I mean, we got the email, but how are you feeling right now, Ms. Jackson?
I feel great about it. I just really feel like it's a testimony to my Prince George's County Public Schools education. I've been in the school system since I've been in school, and it's really given me a great foundation to not only get into Harvard, but I hope to succeed there, and I plan to succeed there because of what I've learned here and what I'll take there. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. We wish her all the best. And thanks, Dr. Hite, clearly for staff who have prepared her and who consistently go that extra mile to make sure that our students get what they need to get. Okay, so some upcoming events. Please look forward to the board website for dates of meetings that are very important, particularly those that are around the budget as we go into the budget season. There are some listed. I'll go over the ones for January and February, but please, again, check the website. We have a public hearing for renaming the Francis Fuchs Media Center on January 10th at 6:30. On January the 18th, we have a special meeting to discuss and vote on the boundary improvement recommendations that's been made by Superintendent Hite. If you recall, that vote was originally scheduled for tonight. That has been moved to January the 18th. January 24th at 5 p.m., we have a budget work session. On the 24th, we also have operating budget public hearing. So the work session will occur, and then we'll have a public hearing for you to hear about what Dr. Hite is proposing for the budget. On the 26th of January at 7 p.m., we have a board meeting. On January 19th, the board meeting is a 1 p.m. meeting. I'm sorry, on January the 9th, the board meeting is a 1 p.m. meeting. And February 9th, I'm sorry. February 16th, 5 p.m., we have our capital improvement program and finance audit and budget meeting. On the 21st, we have another budget work session at 5 o'clock. At 7 o'clock on the 21st, we have another operating budget public hearing. And on the 23rd of February, we have a 7 p.m. board meeting. If you're interested in speaking at any of these meetings, please call 2.5 hours prior to the time of the meeting to register. And if you would join me in a moment of silence for the following. Omari Knoll, a kindergarten student at Lewisdale Elementary School, his mother, Simone Monroe, and aunt, Janet Macklin Assing, who all perished in a house fire. Jean Coder, former guidance secretary at Largo High School. Ida Pinkney, former educator for over 60 years, substitute teacher at community-based classroom, and mother of Joy Pinkney, secretary at Vansville Elementary School. Goldie Smith Watson, a former educator and administrator, and stepmother to former board member Dr. Ron Watson. James Edwards, father of Lisa Faraboy, principal, Port Towns Elementary. Carolyn Sue Rye, a retiree and mother-in-law of Candy Rye, a technology student applications. Karen Sue Yeatman, sister-in-law of Candy Rye, technology student applications. Stephanie Chapman, reading teacher, Hyattsville Elementary School. Ronald G. Cunningham, deputy superintendent, Charles County Public Schools, and former PGCPS educator and administrator. Ramon Mack, wife of Clifford Mack, an investigative counselor in security services. And Dr. Walter Dozier, a former Prince George's County Government Education liaison. That list was quite long tonight. I thank you for joining us in a moment of silence, and keep their families in your prayers. I yield the floor to Superintendent Hite for a report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board, and good evening to our viewing public and those of you in attendance. I'd like to begin by welcoming everyone back for a new year. I hope everyone had a restful break. I would also like to thank parents, staff, and members of the community who participated in the boundary hearings over the last few months. With your input, we have been able to develop recommendations that will help us better meet the needs of our students and families. While we might not have been able to give everyone everything they wanted, we do believe that our efforts were enhanced by your comments at the hearings. We always appreciate the time you take to let us know how you feel about issues concerning your schools and your children. Elsewhere in our schools, we are seeing the benefits of our community partnerships. Washington Redskins player Brian Arakpo recently visited Thurgood Marshall Middle School through a partnership between the NFL and National Dairy Council to support wellness initiatives, good nutrition, and physical activity. We also are working to improve our school buildings. We held groundbreakings late last year, for Oxon Hill High School and Avalon Elementary School to replace decades-old buildings. I can assure you that the students and staff at both of those schools are extremely excited about walking into those new schools. Please mark your calendars for our upcoming showcase of specialty programs, public charter schools, and career and technical education programs that will be held on January 17th. The showcase will be held at Charles Herbert Flowers High School in Springdale from 6 to 8 p.m. In the event of inclement weather, the showcase will be held the following week on January 24th. In a few minutes, we will begin discussions of my proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2013. I invite the public to attend the community budget forums over the next few weeks. The first forum will be held on Wednesday, January 11th at Laurel High School. The next forum will be held on Tuesday, January 17th at Gwynn Park Middle School, followed by the final forum on Wednesday, January 25th at Cor L. Rice Elementary School. All forums will begin at 6 p.m. I'm pleased to announce that we have reached the 70,000 subscribers milestone for our e-alert system. We began this system in November. Subscribers can get PGCPS news and information by text message or email. If you haven't already done so, just go to the PGCPS website at www.pgcps.org and click on the yellow PGCPS text and email alerts button near the bottom of the page. Finally, I am pleased to announce that last night I had the privilege of attending an awards ceremony at the historic Lincoln Theater, honoring our recipients of this year's Posse Foundation Scholarship. As you know, the Posse Foundation is one of the most comprehensive and renowned college access and youth leadership development programs in the country. Since 2004, Posse has awarded 73 scholarships to students from our school district. That represents more than $7.8 million to top-tier universities and colleges. We're pleased tonight to have Mr. Jonathan Harris, an awardee from 2011 of the Posse Scholarship, who attends the University of Wisconsin. And I, too, before getting to the Posse Scholarship recipients, want to congratulate Faith Jackson for her tremendous work and for your tremendous achievements throughout the time that you've been in our system, and congratulations on being accepted to Harvard. And as I wrote to you in the email, I knew it was going to occur all along. So I had confidence in you, and we're so very proud of you. And we're so very proud of you, too, Jonathan, for representing us at the University of Wisconsin. And we are proud of the young individuals who were the scholarship recipients from last evening. Those individuals are Deja Tyree of Fairmont Heights High School, Gianna Fripp of Eleanor Roosevelt High School, Dale Russell of Bowie High School, Talio Quevedo of Crossland High School, Darren Duffin of Bladensburg High School, Aliyah Minor of Oxon Hill High School, and Kawa Rudd of Friendly High School. Congratulations to each of the recipients. Madam Chair, this concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hite. Colleagues, at this time, I'm going to legislative agenda, which is item 5.0. Mr. Lucci, if you would please come forward.
leadership team for 2012. I looked at your agenda, and I just saw there's just a couple of minor items on there, stuff like the budget and boundary changes, no big deals, so maybe I'll take a while. We have before you tonight 2 pieces of legislation, as well as a legislative agenda for 2012 for your consideration. I'll go over the legislative agenda first. It has 6 planks similar to last year. The first one calls upon the state to update the funding formula so that Prince George's County gets all the money it's due based on the changes to the federal tax law. Last year, this was a top priority of our county executive, but did not occur, and we believe we should never give up and always make it our top priority, because the children of Prince George's County Public Schools deserve those funds under the law, and the legislature needs to recognize that. Secondly, it calls for maintenance of effort reform. Fortunately, this has not affected us as much this past year, because our county executive has fully funded our school system, but many counties have had issues with between the school district and the county government regarding what the actual level of maintenance of effort is. In the last closing moments of the 2011 Maryland General Assembly, a very, very minor change was inserted into the budget without any kind of hearing, and that resulted in drastically changing what the floor is that counties must fund public schools. And so Maryland Association of Board of Education will be back with legislation to fix that and to fix some other things as well, and we propose to be supportive of that. Third, the past 3 years, there's been this sort of Damocles hanging over our heads in the form of a proposed shift of paying educators' pensions, shifting it from the state to first the county, and then they said it directly to the local boards of education. This would have a devastating impact on our funding, and each year we've opposed it, and the House has stood by our side. The Senate has not, because it's a big item for the Senate President, but we propose to continue to oppose that shift. Fourth, the Governor is planning to make as his top plank and theme this year job creation, and one of the great ways for job creation is to have more school construction funding, and he's, I understand, going to be proposing a large increase in the school construction budget, and we want to support him on that and make sure those funds are not shifted elsewhere. 5, to support flexibility for the county public schools, there's 2 pieces of legislation in that would give the board and the school system slightly greater powers. One is in terms of year-round schools, which just gives them the authority, does not require it. And the second would have a hotline number on the drug-free school zone signs, so people could call in and turn in the dealer. Finally, we continue to oppose unfunded mandates on school operations. There are always several bills requiring school systems to do different things. 2 of them we'll be considering after this legislative agenda. So I'll stop there if you would like, or if you want, I could keep going on the 2 bills. I'll keep going on the bills. You have before you 2 local bills that had a hearing earlier last month and will now be before the delegation. First one is PG 403-12, entitled Prince George's County Board of Education Recycling Program School Facilities. You've seen this bill before. It would require the county school system to engage in a countywide program of recycling and to figure out how to finance that. Obviously, it's a very worthy goal, but would be the only school system in the state with that state requirement. And I understand that the school system, in conjunction with the county Office of Recycling and the Department of Environmental Resources, they're moving forward on now first a pilot project and then hopefully a whole countywide program for recycling. So it appears that the previous legislation has spurred everyone on, and the bill would not be necessary. The second bill is PG 410-12, Education Prince George's County School Budgets Transparency. As you know, a piece of legislation passed the General Assembly last year requiring the school district to put certain things on the website regarding contracts and to have that be available on the website and have it be available by zip code. That bill takes effect January 1, 2013. This bill now takes that requirement to the budget data and asks that budget data be available, not asks, it requires that it be available by individual schools. And again, it would take effect January 1, 2013. So you may want to ask about whether we ought to evaluate the efficacy of the first bill before passing a second one. But those are the two pieces of legislation that are before you, for which I ask a position to take that to the delegation when the General Assembly begins next Wednesday, January 11th, 2012.
Thank you, Mr. Lucci, for that report. I do have Ms. Johnson, and we're going to do the bill separate, so I didn't know if your comments were based on the 5 points, 6 points. You're up. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. It is about the fourth bill. So if anyone has 1, 2, or 3, I'll wait.
Go right ahead.
There is none. Mr. Lucci, so that I can be clear, obviously adding money for school construction, is this coming from a generated amount of money of state resources, or is this capturing the jobs bill money through the federal government? I'm unclear. Is this new money generated from within the state, or is it being packaged and presented as largesse on the form and on the part of the governor with money that came through the feds?
You've gone right to the heart of the matter, Ms. Johnson, and I've heard rumors for both positions, and we will find out on January 18th when the governor releases his budget.
Which no one's taking it. Love it. That is what it was supposed to do.
Right.
But it concerned me seeing it written in this manner. It may give the residents of the state of Maryland, Prince George's specifically, the idea that somehow the state was creating this largesse. It's not our sourcing. It is coming through the jobs bill that passed through the Obama administration, and we are very happy to know. We just can't wait for Dr. Hite to find out exactly how much that may mean to us. We could truly use it, and to have people to be employed. That is the great thing about it. It will give people work in the trades industry, and I am so pleased that it may happen, but it is not through the auspices and goodwill of the state.
I understand your point. I can do some wordsmithing to that point to provide for that.
Thank you. Colleagues, I will entertain a motion relative to PG 403-12 and 410. One is the recycling program. The other, 410, is the transparency in school board budgets, if there's a motion. Dr. Hite, do you have any position you'd like to share with the board on either of these two pieces of legislation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do. And what worries me about both of these are, one, is that it's a duplication of efforts that we've already begun in both situations. And so with the recycling, with respect to the recycling, we began working with the county a year ago on utilizing the countywide recycling program inside of our schools. That work has taken some time, but we're in the final stages of that work based on the legislation that happened a year ago. With respect to the other 410, we have now a place on our website that is accountability and transparency. Because of our new student-based budgeting format, we will also have the budgets of every school on the web page this year, which means that constituents, parents, business members, community members, elected officials can see everything about the school spending, everything about the district spending, and they can even see that by school. That will be available on the website. And so my point in introducing these comments is that, so I see these things as duplications to those efforts that would also bring with it the need to expend more resources in order to develop the types of components in these two bills. And so I would move, my recommendation is that the board oppose those because we're working on both of those areas, and our staff are working on both of those areas as directed by the board from a very similar conversation that we had a year ago.
And so my question, I guess, Dr. Hite, would be, do you see anything in the current process? Well, so one, could you give us a date when you think that'll be fully implemented? And then two, do you see anything in the bill that would indicate a reporting requirement that you're not including in what you're doing now with regard to school-based budgeting?
In the second bill, there was a requirement in terms of the zip code of the individual with whom we are contracting. That is not inside of any requirement that we currently have.
The zip code?
The zip code of the individual that we're contracting with. Okay. And that's really the only reporting requirement that I do not see that we have the ability to do now.
Okay.
And I will ask Mr. Miles to report on the recycling effort. I know he and his staff have been working directly with the county's recycling program.
Yes, we've been working with the county for the last probably 8 months with pilot programs and setting it up and getting it going. We're going to meet at the end of the month, early February, to outline the full proposal for all schools going forward. We're also folding this into the reduction of services and combination with services with the county that going forward where we'll be able to identify how we help each other in this particular process. So it is a part of the county and the board's effort to work together to make sure that recycling throughout the county is consistent and that it meets the needs of the bills and the regulation, but more importantly, meets the needs of our schools.
Well, I guess since we went to the recycling, we'll deal with that one first and come back to the 410. Colleagues, is there a motion on PG 403?
I move to accept the superintendent's recommendation to oppose PG 403-12.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved and second that the Board of Education oppose PG 403-12. Any further discussion on that? 403? Okay. Ms. Jackson.
Dr. Hite, do we have a record of the amount of schools that have already implemented recycling programs on their own?
I think Mr. Miles actually has that information. We have a lot of recycling across the county for paper. We have to utilize the county's help for plastic, aluminum, and glass. But we have many of our schools who are already participating. As a matter of fact, we have a couple of, we have Abby-Tibby containers at some of our schools, and then at other schools we have different types of containers. But it's going on at many of the schools. Mr. Miles, do you have a specific number?
The current project, and several of the project with the county that's a pilot right now, there are 28 schools. But prior to that, we've been doing recycling probably for a number of years in different areas, including iron, scrap metal. And so in essence, if we look at additional programs that have been ongoing with regard to recycling efforts in schools, I think there were a total of 56 schools that had undertaken the recycling efforts.
And the language of the bill is kind of like ambiguous. What exactly would it require us to recycle, or is it going to be determined afterwards? Because it just kind of said.
It just says solid waste. It doesn't explain. And then the other part about it is that's a little bit ambiguous is where it says that the county would have to come up with methods of financing the recycling efforts, which it's unclear what that means to me.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
And congratulations again. Great role model for the rest of the county.
On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. Okay, colleagues, with regard to 410, I'd just like to make a couple of comments before I entertain a motion. And did you have a comment on that, Mr. Burrows?
I was ready to make the motion.
Okay, if you could hold off on that for a second. One of the comments that was made to me relative to this legislation, I know last year we opposed it, and that first tier did get through. One of the comments made to me was that while this particular board and superintendent may voluntarily do this kind of work to ensure transparency around the budget, that, you know, we're not here forever, that if it's in law, it's, you know, it's a legal requirement. And so the main issue that I have with this bill is not the transparency issue. I think that we need to be more transparent relative to the budget, so that when parents are, you know, when we're asking them to advocate, we want them to know this is how we're spending the money. Having said that, it is another unfunded mandate, if you will. And so I would be willing to support legislation like this if you, Mr. Lucci, and the board so wanted to do that. You know, they may not want to, would actually say the Board of Education supports transparency of our budgets at school levels, as long as the requester of this bill includes the funding that would be required to develop the programs and processes. And I say that because I think when I did ask her last year, it was somewhere between $70,000, $80,000, but it wasn't really clear in terms of what the cost was. In these economic times, it's difficult to say, it's crazy for us to say we don't want to be transparent by voting against the bill, but it doesn't make good sense to mandate for us to continue to do things, particularly if we're already doing it, if you're also going to not provide the funding for it. So I would entertain a motion to that effect. I'll entertain a motion that doesn't address that, but I did want to put that out there because that's what was said to me, that, you know, and that's a true statement. This board can come and go, and so will the superintendent, and those requirements, although I don't think likely that would happen, but that is a possibility.
I'd like to move to support PG 410-12 school board budgets and transparency.
Is there a second? The motion was to support PG 410-12. No caveats. That wasn't a motion. Is there a second? Seeing no second. Is there another motion? Ms. Johnson?
I move that Prince George's County Public School System Board of Education would support this bill, so long as the maker of the bill provides an avenue to fund it.
Second. It's been properly moved and second that the Prince George's County Board of Education does support transparency in budgets, which would be PG 410-12, as stated by Ms. Johnson. Any further discussion? Ms. Higgins.
Thank you. I guess I just would ask that there be an independent source of funding, because the maker of the bill could say, we'll fund it in your own budget. So that it be a separate source of funding. Because the motion is that it the person identify a source of funding, which may mean that they could say, you know, fund it in your own budget.
Oh, I think what you're saying.
Yes, please. The amendment would be that they find an independent or a separate source of funding other than PGCPS. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Beck?
I agree. That was my comment.
Okay. Mr. Burrows?
Madam Chair, first, I'm confident that there's no such thing as a friendly amendment, but I do want to start off by saying I'm in full support of this bill. This bill, Prince George's County School Board budgets, transparency does just that. It creates transparency. This bill ensures that the public, members of the community, have full access to our budget. This allows the taxpayers to see exactly how their taxpayer dollars are being used to improve student achievement. This has nothing to do with Annapolis slapping down mandates, trying to make the board do something extra without funding it. All this bill is asking us to do is to create a website. And we already have a website up. Just add a link to it. This shouldn't cost anything too significant where we need to require them to add funding for it. Is really just asking for a website, and I believe we already have the capability to do that. Something else, last year when the contracts policy was up, a member of the board said we can just look over to the superintendent and ask him to do it, and it can be done. I actually recently asked for a list of all of the minority business contracts, and I got an email back saying that in accordance to our policy, I would have to have the full board, I would have to go through an entire process for me, a member of the board, to get the minority business contracts. Because of the bill that passed last year for contracts, after 2013, I can easily get information, members of the community can easily get information. If I, a member of the board, struggle to get simple information like the minority business contracts, I can only imagine how the members of the community feel. They should really have the opportunity to access this information from home. Not every parent can come out to the school board meeting. Most of our meetings, some of our meetings are during the day, during working hours, and it's really, it's their money, it's taxpayers' dollars, and I'm in full support of this bill. Whether we get funding or not is simply to create a website. And honestly, I'm not sure if, I think this bill is going to pass, and I think it should pass regardless of our position.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Any further comments? Ms. Johnson?
One, the data that is being asked, there is no question that in having the business and the work of the board and the budget that comes to us, which is provided by the citizens of Prince George's, the state of Maryland, and also funding through the federal government, everyone has a right as well as a responsibility. But I say to you, using the word simple to describe what the website would be that would take the data, first of all, it has to be designed, it has to be able to be presented and navigable. And I say to you that there is a cost attached to that. You then have to have a webmaster that is available at all times, because you can have glitches, and if there are changes, let's say we get additional money that we add, this is not just as simple as scanning a document and putting a static page. Therefore, my motion, which got a second, then an amendment, is about, yes, we are as transparent as we need to be and must be, but to do the website, to give the level of access in a navigable format that is easy to understand, that has items and elements that can be shifted, moved, and displayed in different formats, that type of website is not free. And you need to have somebody available to do that. And all I wanted is to ensure that going down that road, which is wonderful, we'll do it, but we need to pay for it. That's all that I am saying. It is not against this legislation. Frankly, we don't even need legislation to be transparent. It ought to be part of the work that we do, but no matter. So I want to dispel the idea that that type of website is simple. And I think that Mr. Watts can attest to some level of my understanding that it is not just put up a static page that you've scanned.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. On the motion.
I buzzed in.
I'm sorry?
I buzzed in.
Well, your buzzer's not working because it's not on. Mr. Burrows.
Ms. Johnson, I hear you, and I thank you for supporting the bill. And no doubt it's definitely going to take extra effort from staff. I'm not sure if Dr. Hite, if Mr. Watts is prepared to say if he already has the ability to do this. We have a very large IT department, and I'm sure that they're extremely capable of accomplishing this already. I'm not sure if he's able to respond to that.
Colleagues, can we keep the comments, please. Dr. Hite, did you not, when we asked you to speak to these bills, did you not state that you were already doing this now?
Yes, we already have a list of all contracts on the web. The reason it required a vote, Mr. Burrows, is because you asked for the system to submit all of those to you. And the board does have a policy that if it takes more than a certain amount of hours, but you could have gone online and looked for a contract and printed out all of those. Now, the searchable component is something that we're working on. We're trying to make sure that there's a searchable component on the website so that as individuals are interested in our budget or contracts or MBE, that there's a searchable mechanism to do that. As I indicated before, there is one provision in the legislation that is not available, and that is the reporting of an individual's zip code.
And so, to your point, if this is the direction that we're already going in, and we are already establishing a searchable component to it, then we're already doing this, and we're already moving in this direction. And so why, exactly. So why would we attach a monetary note to our support of the bill if this is something that we're already going to do? We're already in the process of doing. We're already going to add the searchable component, and realistically, we know that this bill is not going to. Will have a tough time passing if it has any fiscal note on it. And if we're already moving in that direction, as the superintendent has said, then we don't need to attach any money to it if that's what we're already doing.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. I guess I have to make one final comment. If that's the case, if in fact you say, Dr. Hite, we're doing it, then I guess my question would be, why would we spend money to do it if we're already doing it? And I guess, so clearly, the bill makes sense to have transparency. It's the cost factor that's the issue. So if we're already doing it, essentially what you're saying is that we're already doing it, and then we're going to pay an additional $80,000 to add a zip code? I'm not understanding that. But at any rate, I guess that's my point, is that what you're saying is the only thing we're not doing at this point, you have to create the search engine, and the zip code requirement is not what you currently are doing. And so I support Ms. Johnson's motion, and I think it's reasonable to say that we want to be transparent. We saw what passed last year, which made sense. I think it's very reasonable that we are transparent, that we want to be transparent. I do believe, however, that we have to, at the end of the day, we got to pay for it. Okay, Ms. Thompson, call the roll, please.
Mr. Armwood? Aye. Mrs. Beck?
Aye.
Ms. Boston?
Aye.
Mr. Barrows?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Ms. Jackson?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mrs. Jacobs?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, Mr. Lucci, I think you have your positions on both pieces of legislation.
And then do you want to take a vote on the agenda as well?
Oh, yes, that's right. The 6 items. I think that's with the caveat, Mr. Lucci, that if anything else comes up, I think last year we may have added a couple things beyond. So if that comes up from board members, I'll send those to you to add on. Colleagues, with regard to the agenda for 2012, we have 6 items. I will entertain a motion with regard to that agenda as well.
Move to adopt the legislative agenda proposed by
Thank you, Ms. Beck.
Second.
So probably moved in second that we adopt the 2012 General Assembly legislative session agenda for the Board of Education. Any discussion? Ms. Johnson, if the motion was to adopt the agenda, which includes all 6 items. Did you have a discussion? Did you want to ask questions on number 5? You may if you
I
if
see
you have a
you
question.
pulled those that we were going to do.
There were separate
independently.
pieces of legislation.
I got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor? I'm sorry, hold on. Ms. Eubanks? Mr. Burrows?
Just wanted to recognize Delegate Valentino Smith, the author of the Transparency Bill, has joined us.
He needs to learn his. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed.
Thanks.
Colleagues, we have one registered speaker on discussion item 6.1. You have been registered to speak in public comment forum where the Board of Education will listen to your comments. We will not necessarily address your comments except for clarity reasons. All registered speakers will have 3 minutes to make your presentation. At the sound of the buzzer, you may complete the sentence that you are on. Only please, registered speakers may not relinquish any part of your speaking time to a registered or unregistered individual. Please address individuals by titles rather than names. Refrain from using profanity or derogatory terms. You're encouraged to use titles rather than names, as I just said, and please leave a copy of your statement with Mr. Coleman, sitting right there, if you so please, so that the board may have them for further review. Your adherence to these guidelines will enable public comment to run smoothly. Mr. Harris.
Good afternoon, Board of Education and Superintendent. In no way, shape, or form have I looked at the budget, but I do think, and I probably will never look at the budget again in my life anytime soon, but I do think there's some priorities that I think you should just keep in mind, and I just want to speak from a college student standpoint today. First, I would really support, or I really would hope that we can find a way to put a little bit more money into developing a college prep course, but a course that doesn't just talk about how to get into college, like, SATs and different things like that. I think if you talk to some of the students sitting behind me, college is like this big mystery bubble, and you don't really know what to expect when you go there. We probably have a lot of people who want to be doctors in the room, a lot of people who want to be scientists, engineers. And the thing that I realized, and we're talking to some of my colleagues / friends in the schools they go to, is we all take some of the same courses our freshman year that prepare us to be an engineer, to be a doctor, to be a scientist, and different things like that. And I think it will be really important if we have a course that talks about those things. That you're going to have to take college algebra, you're going to have to take chemistry 101, biology 101. That if you want to be an engineer, you're going to have to, take certain classes. And then that brings me to algebra. I think that we should find some money that to redevelop our math department. I think that having it, I don't know the exact reason. I know there's a science to it. Dr. Arbogast, the reason why you split up Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. But I think it just should be a little bit more rigorous, to the point where my experience in college was, and I know it's on the college level, but we did a lesson a week. So something that we probably covered in a month, we probably covered in 2 days in college. And I know that's not no way, shape, or form good for a middle schooler, probably even a person in 10th grade. But I think once you go in the 11th grade and 12th grade level, if we really talk about preparing students to be college ready, we should have more rigor on that level. And then I think we should find some money for teacher development. And I know these are definitely going to find money for teacher development, but more on the way of every single teacher that comes into our system has gone to college. And I think that when we talk to our new teachers and when we talk to the teachers who've been here for a while, they know what it takes to be successful in college. And I think they should, display that a little bit more when they talk to students. That means we should be getting tests every week, if not every day, because that's what happens in college. And like I said, this is not something that maybe should happen on the middle school level, but definitely when you get to 10th grade, test every weekly should be the standard. And I think I would just want to go back and, I hate to say this, Ms. Johnson, you were right. We definitely need to go. And I don't want my time to run out. Ms. Johnson, man. Okay, I'll write an email now. Shoot. Okay, but we should change from the big textbooks to have the short text in it to actually reading full books. Because obviously the event, I know it costs a lot more money, but I think it'll pay big dividends when it comes to our writing, our speaking, and just being able to understand complex texts in colleges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Dr. Hite, yield to you for presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Harris. Those words were right on target with where we're attempting to go, particularly with our new Common Core curriculum and the direction in which we are trying to go with writing, with reading, and with mathematics. So thank you very much for those comments. As required by law, this is the time of year where I'm required to propose our next fiscal year's operating budget to the Board of Education. And today I am proposing a $1.6 billion spending plan that reflects pretty much a stable outlook. This budget has a set of priorities, and those priorities are funding student needs, innovation, fiscal stability, supporting employees, and developing this budget. We're also looking at a spending plan that includes a $9 million investment in employee compensation. There's also continued investment in some of the innovation in the programs, such as middle college talented and gifted, or the expansion of talented and gifted, secondary school reform, and expansion of grades for current charter schools. Additionally, there's a new student-based budgeting system that will provide schools with direct control and more flexibility over their budgets and limit reductions away from the classroom. The goals of this budget are to address structural issues, to allow adequate investment in student needs, and build on our fiscal stability while cutting our overall maintenance of effort. And so with that, we will have a presentation this evening, and this presentation is the first submission of my proposed operating budget for FY13. And tonight's presentation will include our fiscal outlook, the priorities of our system, the actual budget process, and then it will include a short synopsis on student-based budgeting. So at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Stansky to walk us through the fiscal picture that includes some of the challenges that we're faced with moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Hite. Good evening, members of the board. Once again, we're here, as Dr. Hite alluded to proposing the FY13 budget. As again, we continue to face some challenges. We are not as severe challenges that we've seen the last few years, but continuing revenue challenges. And this slide just goes over briefly some of those challenges. As you're well aware, state and county funding are based on really two main items. One is enrollment, and two is wealth. And we are continuing to see a decline in enrollment for the district. However, that has been offset slightly. Even though we are seeing an overall decline, we are seeing an increase in populations, ELL, and our farms population. And next couple slides, we'll go into more detail about that enrollment. We're still struggling to get out of an economic recession. Property tax assessments for the county were just released, and they're down 15%, which is the largest decrease in the state. And there's a potential for further reduction, some upwards of near 30% in the next round of assessments. So, and as you're well aware, the county government relies heavily on property taxes, not commercial taxes, but actually residential property taxes. So this is a big hit to the county. And unlike just like in previous years, the state is facing roughly $1 billion budget gap. It is improving. There was $2 billion last year, so not nearly as bad, but still a gap that the state is going to have to address. And unfortunately, a new sort of phenomena that the district may have to contend with is federal funding. The golden sacred cow is even having to make some reductions as well. And as I don't know how if the public has been following, but due to the lack of action by the super committee, as of now, every federal department has to cut their budget 8% by January 1, 2013, if Congress does not act to adjust that. And what that means is that the Department of Education would have to cut their budget 8%. And a large percentage of their budget is programs, Title I, Title II, Title III, special education, race to the top, career and technical education. The list is pretty extensive, Head Start. And I can't see a way for them to cutting 8% without hitting those programs, which does impact the school district. And we are, even with the budgets that the federal government's passing now, we've already seen slight reductions in some of those programs. And it is of concern, especially Title I, given our increase in farms population, we are seeing continual declines in our Title I funding. So it is becoming more and more of a district financial burden as opposed to the federal government. So we will continue to monitor that. I think one of the risks with that, though, is especially if these cuts do come, they will come mid-year. and so we will have to make adjustments in January or February of next year in order to make it happen. So obviously, my team will be monitoring Congress as it moves through, obviously in election year too, to see what happens. So stay tuned on the federal front. So this is the actual overall proposed budget that we're submitting to the board tonight. It is, well, I guess you would say, a maintenance budget. As you can see, it is a total $1.614 billion, which is only $238,000 increase from last year's total. We are asking the county at this time to maintain their funding level at $617 million. Also asking the state to maintain their funding level at $874. We do, on the state perspective, I do feel like this is a relatively conservative estimate, actually, even though given our revenue or our enrollment declines, we do get extra money because of that 3,000 student increase in farms and 800 student increase in ELL. So extra funds from the state will come, but obviously we won't know the official state number till the governor releases his budget on the 18th. But I am confident that when that number is released, we will only have to make adjustments like $1 to $2 million, either positive or negative. So I'm feeling fairly confident that number is within a good range. Board source money is actually going up $4.7 million. This is mostly due to the Wallace grant that were awarded this year, and also we are again going to propose a 2% increase in building use fees. And the final is a $4.5 million decline in federal aid, and this is essentially across the board. Title I, special ed are all seeing reductions due to, again, federal budget decisions that have already been made. Again, wanted to just give the board and the public a picture of our enrollment trends over the last 4 years. As you can see, we saw a pretty significant decline this year, 2.2% in overall enrollment in the county. We're now down to 123,839 pre-K through 12 students. Just to remind the board that there are students that are not eligible for state funding. So you'll see at the bottom the total eligible students. We are down to 117,930, which is about a 1.5% decline. But as you look at the bottom, these are special populations that the state does give the district additional dollars for. So while we're seeing that decline in the overall population, we are seeing a 5.2% increase in farms and also a 5.6% increase in our limited English proficiency population. So as you see from the next, we kind of visually graphed this for you. While overall enrollment is going down, you can see our farms and ELL enrollments are going up. And to the fact now, farms, we have as a number, the largest number of farms eligible students in the state at 66,000 students. So as you see, the recession has impacted the county fairly significantly. And you can see we were just at 55,000 in 2008. So that's almost 11,000 increase in free and reduced lunch eligible students. Again, continuing on some challenges, as always, not just, we are not a unique organization to these increases in costs. Our benefits, overall health insurance costs, we're projecting to, again, rise about $14 million. And this is, again, industry standard. This cost continues in the healthcare industry, continue to rise. Retirement costs for non-teacher retirement, for the individuals that we are paying for, going to go up about $2.2 million. We are seeing a fairly significant spike in workers' compensation claims, so we need to add an additional $4 million to that. And as well seeing an increase again in sick leave bank claims to the tune of $3.7 million. So when we say we have a flat budget from a revenue standpoint, you have to add these sort of what we call mandatory costs into the budget, which then kind of produces a budget gap, which we have to deal with. But happy to say that, as our number was around $150 million last year, it's around $44 million this year, so not nearly as significant. And did also want to talk about a last challenge, which is just overall just revenue and who we're competing with in our jurisdiction. And so there's a organization called the Washington Area Boards of Education that puts out a guide every year that compares Washington, D.C. area jurisdictions on a number of items, and one of them is what they spend per pupil. As the board and community are well aware, we can only spend what we receive from the federal, state, and local government. And as you can see, compared to some of our neighboring jurisdictions, our relatively funded pretty lowly, pretty low. Highest, obviously, Arlington County at $18,000 per student. We're at 11 for this is for fiscal year 12 at $11,700 per student. So even if you compare us with the other Maryland jurisdiction, Montgomery County, in this slide, there's a $3,000 per student difference. And let me put that in perspective for you. At a 500-seat elementary school with an elementary school of 500 students, that school in Montgomery County gets an extra $1.5 million than the school in Prince George's County. So those are just, again, some of the revenue challenges we're facing, and compared to, so when folks compare us with these other jurisdictions, also you have to take into consideration that from a funding standpoint, from a resource standpoint, we're just not dealing with as many dollars as some of our neighbors. But yeah, definitely some of the Virginia districts who, and again, we're competing for employees and students against these districts. So. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Dr. Hite, who's going to, again, talk about the vision and the priorities that we've laid out in the fiscal year 2013 budget.
So given those challenges, it's really important to have a direction. And I know that Ms. Johnson has asked periodically, so what will the system look like in 5 years, in 10 years? And one of the things that I wanted to illustrate here is kind of where we are and where we are moving towards. And so if you understand or recall our budget process from the previous years, you know that we either have annual incremental budget increases or decreases. And it's just the way we do budgets. We're either adding a percentage or decreasing in a percentage. And we want to really move that to addressing those issues that have been structural deficiencies within our system and in our structure to allow us to really invest in those things that we think are the most important, and those are the needs of students. We also, as we think about how we fund schools, and schools are funded currently primarily on a staffing model. That means that all schools are typically treated as if they are all the same and they serve all of the same types of students. And we really want to move towards a situation or a system where the funding is in response to the needs of the students in those schools, so that those schools have the ability and the flexibility to design instructional models that are unique to the needs of their student populations. Limited information, or at the very best, a lot of information that is confusing about how each school is funded and staffed. And this goes to the previous conversation that we had around accountability and transparency, to really have in a situation where all of the budgets show just how each school is funded and what those funds are based on. And so that's by school, that's not by district. So individuals in and around communities will have that information at the click of a mouse. Then all of the compliance-based practices, and what that means is that everyone in our system just kind of waits for direction from SASSR or from central office. And it's really a compliance-driven structure where individuals, and many individuals will wait around and be told kind of what to do. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that in that type of model, there is not a lot of room for innovation, but most importantly, there's also not a climate where the system is really responsive to the needs of the schools. And so we want to really redesign a central office that is designed to support schools that enables a culture of innovation. So as I indicated earlier, there are 4 priorities in this year's budget and the proposed budget, and those priorities are funding student needs, funding monies to support our employees. Our employees have made some pretty significant concessions over the past several years, and they have remained committed. And during the same period of time, we have seen increases in student performance, and that speaks to the commitment and motivation and dedication of all of our employees. fiscal stability. It's really important for us to really begin thinking about a fund balance that was very high several years ago to almost zero at the end of last year. And then really think about the innovation in and around our system to really address those issues or to respond to individuals who are selecting out of our system to other programs or to other places. So as we think about those priorities, we want to be responsible in our budget process so that we are stabilizing what we call a fund balance or reserves. We want to strengthen and maintain instruction by really diverting as much of our money that we currently spend centrally to schools. And we are doing that by utilizing the process in student-based budgeting. Investment in employee compensation, and continue the investment in those programs that I described earlier as innovation. There are a couple of guiding principles in the student-based budgeting process, and the guiding principles is really about funding student needs. So we want to make sure that these things are, that this process is equitable, is student-centered, that it's transparent, and we keep coming back to that term, and that it's flexible in that it allows the decision-making to occur as close to possible where the instruction of a student is taking place. So with that, I want to yield now to Dr. Arbogast, who really is going to talk about the PALLAD program and what we learned from the schools that participated in the PALLAD program during the current year.
Good evening. We were at the advantage that several districts have already proceeded with student-based budgeting in some form. So when we began last school year, we had some knowledge from other districts, which was very helpful, in particular Baltimore City. Then we created committees to work through the principles that Dr. Hite just spoke about what does equity mean, how did we want to create these funding structures, how do we want to create the algorithms. And then we knew we needed to go with a pilot. So what we did was we purposely picked principals that we thought were pretty strong building leaders. And the schools that we picked are listed up here on this screen. So we bring the principals together, and they're looking at their budget, and they're petrified. And the word that's not up here that probably should be is trust. They didn't necessarily trust that we were giving them the permission to restructure their schools the way they wanted to. And we had a meeting, and it just wasn't moving forward. And then we had this epiphany, I think, at a meeting where we had them all in a room together, and we just started talking about, well, what do you really care about, and how would you structure for it? And that kind of broke through the ice. And we had some very, very creative thinking around how to support math at a school that was really struggling with math, how to restructure schedules, and the conversation really went to value. What is the most important things we value in our school, and how do we structure our staff to support that value? And this was really important to us, but that flexibility did not come easily. We really had to work on the trust piece. The support came both through the academics, but also through budget, in helping these principals get through this piece. And even now, we're working with a consultant around student scheduling, because the scheduling really drives how you use your staff and how you position people and what people that you need. And then the timing. This takes time. It took time to develop the trust. It took time to develop to understand the algorithms before we could move further.
Thank you, Dr. Arbogast. This next slide is really sort of the crux of how we fund schools. So it is how we actually, when we say funding student need, how we attach dollars to those needs. As you can see, the total SBB funds, $407 million. So these are all the funds that are available for each individual school to, as Dr. Arbogast alluded to, structure their school in a way to make students achieve at each school. And when we talk about transparency, when we talk about priorities, this is really where, as a district, we show the community what we care about and what we really believe it takes to educate the different and diverse types of students we have in our district. So starting tomorrow and through the weekend, schools will be receiving a second round of budgets based on this formula for student weights. It is, again, like I said, $407 million. We also have a reserve set aside of $9 million that is there to help, for a lot of reasons, help schools that may not be able to make it, to really to adhere if there's some spikes or serious spikes in enrollment, to address those issues, and to really make it a stable sort of a stable process. Those budgets will be received on January 20th, and we'll go through a review process by the instructional directors, my office, curriculum and instruction, guidance, human resources. All of these offices will be reviewing to ensure that these budgets that the schools are developing will be adequate to meet the needs of those students. So as you can see, we have 5 basic weights. We have obviously the basic funding level that all students will receive. We have weights for specific grade levels, and certainly Dr. Arbogast, who and his team were instrumental in really creating these weights, because at the end of the day, academics was at the core of telling us what resources it would really take to educate these type of students. So we have weights based on certain grade levels. We have obviously a weight for poverty, for academic performance, both low academic performance and high academic performance, and then weights for our ELL students, both at the beginner, intermediate, and advanced level. Just again to brief the board and the public again on when you hear the terms unlocked, locked, and locked plus, what that means. An unlocked position means that those are positions that can be purchased in the school budgets at the discretion of the principal. A locked position is positions and resources that are allocated by staff at the central office. And locked plus is a position that are allocated and resourced by staff at the central office, but if a principal chooses to add on to that position, they have the ability to do so. Again, the timeline, we did go through a first round in October and November. It was a great trial run. We learned a lot, and I think we'll be in much better shape to give the January submissions. I said the revised allocations will go out tomorrow and through the weekend. We have updated enrollment projections that we will be basing that on. We will incorporate any boundary changes that get voted on January 18th. Again, there will be central office review and feedback. We anticipate getting the actual budgets, the decisions that were made by the principals to the board and to the public on February the 3rd for obviously then a vote at the end of February. And then once again, we will finalize allocations, again, adjust any enrollment projections. We'll have final submissions in April for then a board vote in June. And then finally, we have our timeline. As Dr. Hite alluded to, there will be 3 community budget forums, and then also 3 budget work sessions and public hearings with the board. And then as of now, scheduled to vote on February the 23rd. And as the proposed budget document is on board docs and it is online. We will be printing more copies through the next week and a half to be available for the public, but you can already visit the website or board docs and already get the budget document online. And thank you for listening, and be glad to answer any initial questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Hite. Thank you, Mr. Stansky. Thank you, Dr. Arbogast. So we clearly know this is a big deal in terms of how we're restructuring budget. Colleagues, I just want to point out that we will do as we have done in the past, and that is to create a schedule. I'll try to make sure staff creates that schedule this week, well, by Monday, for submission of questions. And Dr. Hite, I assume we will take the same process we've done before as we go through each section. And colleagues, we can, if you have any specialty areas that you want to concentrate on, that's fine. I'm just going to put out a schedule of sections, and we can do it that way. In the meantime, we have questions tonight. I have Ms. Jackson, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Armwood, and Ms. Beck.
My question is regarding the enrollment of students that are ineligible for funding. So how does the money that we spend on these students compare to the money we get in tuition, and how do we otherwise subsidize these students?
So yeah, the tuition rates we typically charge what it costs to educate those students, but the big chunk is the pre-kindergarten students. We don't charge for pre-kindergarten, and we get no money from the state for pre-kindergarten. So those 5,461 students are all local funded.
Okay, and then we charge tuition for out of county, correct?
Correct.
So I noticed that it doesn't say that we don't get state funding for that. So does that mean we get both state funding and tuition for out of county?
So no, only tuition. So out of state also means out of county, if I'm correct.
Okay.
John Dell said.
Okay. Is that?
There are actually two separate tuition rates, one for in-state and one for out-of-state students.
But this number reflects both out of state and out of county.
And
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to know, do you want the questions based on the top, the middle, and the bottom of the PowerPoint, or just do you want me to lump them and let them go at them whichever way they want?
So you can let them go whichever way you want, Ms. Johnson, for tonight, and then we'll do the schedule and have it out by Monday.
Thank you. Then, Dr. Hite, Mr. Stansky, let me just give you all of them, and then you can go ahead. One, let me begin by saying I am so excited about the student-based budgeting. I think that it is truly a measure whose time has come. With that being something I truly believe, here are my list of questions, concerns, or points. You've indicated that ELL and our children who live in circumstances of poverty farms is on the rise. What is the system doing to address hiring staff of whatever need that we have? One, with dual language skills, and two, who are able to provide a nurturing environment for children where we do look at and build our meal programs and any expansion of them to build into the families what they need to know in order to survive living in some of the food deserts that we have in Prince George's County. Item 2, which was about the meal plan. How are we looking to change any meal planning, expanding it, targeting it, regionalizing it? What do you think these numbers tell you need to do? On to the student-based budgeting. I'd like to know from your perspective, what is your expectation about what each school leader needs to understand about the characteristics of his or her school when you do the aggregate of the student population, which will determine how that money will be put in through the budget? Next item, how are teachers, parents, and community stakeholders going to be utilized for a school and deployed to support the budget decisions that occur at that school? Thirdly, what, as a superintendent and leader of the school district, what security safety lines have you put into place to ensure that the school budget under school-based budgeting will provide the education for the students that are there and the individual schools, and what are the evaluation tools that you have developed or are in the process of developing that will give you real-time understanding and information about whether you need to tinker, move it, whether it's working? Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you, Ms. Johnson. I'll try to do those in order. And the first was the ELL and the students coming from circumstances of poverty, and it was in particular to the training, the onboarding of new teachers, the recruiting of the types of teachers who understand the characteristics of these young people and are able to build and establish rapport with them. So we are looking at all of those components, and so really we have created a new metric in our performance management system that really talks about and promotes the hiring of individuals who are bilingual, and bilingual with subject expertise, which means that not just able to speak another language, but you're actually also certified in a content area subject. Really looking at that to match those individuals, not just in teaching, but support as well, administrators, guidance counselors, secretaries, so forth and so on. We're also looking at the just our overall culture in terms of how do we establish rapport with students and their families, and how do we communicate those expectations that all of those young people will be successful, and really talking about that from a value proposition of our system as to how we treat students and their families as they enter our system. With respect to the meal planning, we are, and I've used this information before, we increased last year, just with breakfast in the classroom, 18,000, by the number of 18,000, the number of children who had access to breakfast just by moving it to the classroom. Those numbers continue to increase, and we're looking to expand that program and the partnerships that allow for that program into many more of our schools. I think at the moment we have almost 30 schools participating, Ms. Lynch, and we are trying to double that number so that we have more. As you know, we also have students, a backpack program where students are actually taking meals home as well, and at several of our schools we've even piloted a dinner program. And so really partnering with the state, in some cases with the Walmart organization. PGCEA was instrumental in helping us receive a Walmart grant to look at how we could provide these opportunities to serve more students breakfast in the classroom. In terms of the expectations for administrators to determine whether or not their plans are meeting their school improvement plans or their strategic planning, we currently have in place a mechanism that monitors the progress of students against the targets that we've established for all schools. That's in their accountability system. We can tell quarterly how those schools are either moving toward that or not, and then we have conversations about the actions that need to occur in order to do that. The move to student-based budgeting was really because of, if we're holding those school principals 100% accountable, but we're controlling 100% of the decision makings for their resources, then many of them, we were sending a confusing message. We want to hold you accountable, but we're telling you what to do. And so now we want those decisions to be more closely aligned to what they feel is necessary to drive student performance to those targets that I just described. The third one, I think, was the same. So the evaluation tools actually are being redefined for administrators and all school staff to really talk about not just those targets, but then how they build that culture to involve individuals as a component of the SPMT, as a component. I was with a PTA group last night down at Fort Foote, and this question came up: how do we get involved in this process? And it is an absolute expectation from this administration that principals communicate with communities so that communities, number one, understand the direction of the school, understand the priorities, and all have an understanding on why certain decisions are or have to be made with respect to their schools. And so those are the types of things that we've done to respond directly to your 4 questions. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything or if I covered all of it.
Dr. Hite, just a small point of clarification. I spoke too quickly. We have 45 breakfast in the classroom programs, and just recently we talked with the state of Maryland and other representatives from Maryland Food and Hunger. And Mrs. Johnson, we're looking at additional 21 schools to add that breakfast in the classroom program, and it really makes a difference, especially when we consider the increase in participation.
Thank you. Mr. Armwood?
Thank you. Just to make sure the public understands, what are the unlocked positions? And when you say positions are locked, for instance, in specialty programs, what does that mean? Because when you say specialty programs, for instance, the arts schools, the science and tech, those are pretty large programs that teachers, that principals still have to make decisions about.
So definition again, so locked means that those resources are allocated centrally. So for teachers in science and tech, for teachers in the creative and performing arts, the district, or meaning the central office, dictates how many teachers or staff go to those schools, as opposed to giving money. Unlocked meaning a set of dollars go to principals and then they make decisions. So the biggest example the best example I could give is special education. So teachers, and every school has special education teachers, but those teachers, those staff, those paraprofessionals are allocated to each school by the special education department, and decisions aren't made on special education by individual principals.
So principals do not have the freedom of selecting who teaches in a special program. So why are some programs saying that they're being forced to cut because they're not getting allocation?
They have freedom to select who teaches, but they don't have freedom to cut that position, nor do they have the freedom to trade that position in. And that's what lock means. It means that there's no flexibility in that position because as a district, we're saying that that position must be maintained.
I think the challenge that you have is that to make this a positive thing where these cuts are coming out of us, we have one pot of money, and whether you make the cuts or whether they make the cuts or the allocations is going to occur. And some people still feel that trust issue is we're putting the blame on them. I understand that's not our intent and that's not what we're really doing, but we've got to really work to communicate that. How is pre-K funded in student-based budgeting? I wasn't clear on that.
It's locked. So the pre-K allocations are given out by early childhood and academics. Okay. And just for your edification for the public, a list of locked, unlocked is in the budget document on pages 62 and 63 of your budget document.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armwood. Ms. Beck?
Thank you. Is there a formula for transient students?
No.
I know some of our schools have a large population of turnover, which would seem like they would need additional support because they're having significant numbers come in and then leave during the school year. I think I would like to have the administration respond to the transient question and then give us some numbers about some of our schools that do have a high number of transient populations in terms of our students. I'm going to assume, which I shouldn't, that all the questions and responses that are asked will be in a comprehensive location on the website.
Always.
Great. What would be a serious spike in enrollment? Right. I know that you said you were holding back a reserve for serious spikes. So at what point do you determine something is a serious spike?
So $1 million. Okay.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
It might be best for me to just read all of these and then look for the responses online. What do you think? Read all of these. I'm looking for a spreadsheet that shows me what a school would have had this existing year if they used student-based budgeting, and then what they would have next year with the same number of students. So if I have a school that's at 500 students of this type of student this year, how many schools will be getting less next year with the exact same populations?
And I think we should add more as well.
Yes, yeah. I think my concern is that one of your markers is innovation. So how can you be innovative other than trading out positions, which is a big one, but in terms of supporting your specific type of population when you have the same number and type of child last year, but then this year you might be getting less in terms of support. I'm looking for formal white paper on how the pilots worked. So we talk about pilots, but I don't know what decisions were made by the pilot schools in terms of lock, unlock, who were traded out, what they did that might be innovative, that because you prefaced your pilots where you're really strong leaders. So what did they do that is going to help me understand and sell this better? Are we mirroring Baltimore City's student-based budgeting? How are we similar? How are we differing from that? I know that other districts are doing student-based budgeting, and that might help us understand this better. Thank you for saying there was a comprehensive list of what was locked plus. I know my first question when I heard this term was nurses, and so I want to know that we're continuing with nurses. And I guess finally I had talked with my colleague Ms. Jackson and Rosalind Johnson, and we thought it might be a good idea to provide a student forum so that we discuss the budget among our consumers who are our students and afford them the opportunity to learn more about, first of all, the budget and then how this would be different. Because I know last year many of the students were wondering why decisions were made and their class sizes got bigger. And I think that listening to them and communicating with them might be worth having a forum set aside for not just student leaders, but students who are showing an interest in the, being part of the discussion. I'm done. I think it might be better to have responses posted online because then you can be more comprehensive and then they can be shared and have the public input better.
And the only one I would provide a response for now is the $9 million. That's a set aside for a spike in enrollment. And that's just not a spike in enrollment. It's also for unique situations. So if that's a very small school, for instance, that could be impacted, then we would have additional monies to address that small school. So if it has a school that has so few kids or students that it actually does not support what they are currently doing, then we will be able to provide them with some additional support to do that.
Okay, and one other thing, did we have any response or give and take with labor? Because of the lock plus issue, I'd like to know how they're weighing in on the whole discussion.
So, Dr. Hite, well, my understanding is that you're going to do like we've done in years past. Labor presents questions that are answered within a time frame. They're posted on the website. The board submits questions. They're answered in a time frame. They're posted on the website. The community submits questions. You have the budget link. They'll ask questions. The answers will be answered, and then the responses will be given, and they'll be posted on the website. So nothing has changed with regard to the interaction with labor, community, or the board in terms of how it's going to be communicated. Just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. Ms. Boston?
I have two questions. On the slide that you have on the weighted positions, I didn't see anything in there for special ed. is that a special, is there a formula for a special weight for special ed, or is that money coming out of a separate pot?
To be honest with you, we've thought that special ed was too complex to create an algorithm. Now, Baltimore City did weight special ed. We were unwilling to do that in this first year because, as you know, not every special ed student is the same, and many require different services, and we felt that the algorithm was simply too complex. So we decided, let's not put that on principals this year. Let's lock it, and let's run through it. And not that we might not consider it in the future, but I'm going to tell you, Ms. Boston, it's very complex when you're trying to weigh an IEP with 30 hours of instructional time versus an IEP with only 1 hour of instructional time. You can see how difficult that gets, and when you start putting related services. So we just felt like we weren't ready to tackle special ed this year.
So those positions or those the money for those students is a lock?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, from a lock pot. What about the kids that fall in two categories in that weighted position, in that category? Because like you may have farm students or students of poverty.
Yeah, so you would get funding for every eligible. So if you had one student who was in 6th grade who was farms and was double basic, you'd get the money for all three.
So you'd get all three, so it'd be added to that weighted?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I just wanted to point out in the weighting, notice we weighted low performance, but we also weighted high performance. So there's actually an incentive for schools to produce high performance. They actually that's incentivized, which we thought was, that was something we did learn from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Ms. Boston. Ms. Waller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, I believe that the student-based budgeting process is an excellent tool for involving our communities and our parents. I serve specifically a very diverse community, and I'm concerned, and I guess even countywide, I'm concerned about how we're communicating the student budget-based process to persons that are non-English speaking so that they can become a part of the process, speak up, ask questions, find out what's available, and to get more involved. And I ask this question also because I'm sure, as we all know, the state of Maryland, Prince George's County in particular, we're in the midst of redistricting. And as we go through this process, I believe that the more information and knowledge a person has, the better we can all serve a community and all play a more important role in educating our students. Thank you.
So we have, in various newsletters, have discussed student-based budgeting. We also have various fact sheets on our website. We did a backpack letter from the superintendent to all parents, just discussing student-based budgeting. In the training with our principals, they are, we've drilled it into their heads that they need to involve their school communities in getting input on how decisions are being made. Anything you want to add on that? I mean, I think we've hit it pretty good, and we're going to continue to.
So, am I understanding you to say that the information has gone out in, I guess, predominantly? I'm sorry, my colleague is talking to me, and she wants to weigh on what I'm asking, I'm sure. But is the information going out in Spanish?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know specifically. And what response are we getting from this community? You all are out there on the front lines. Are we getting response from the non-English speaking community? Are they actively becoming involved in this? Are we really making a concerted effort for them to get involved and to be a part of this process? Are they being trained to get involved in this process? That's a hard question. I'm sorry. And, I feel very strongly that, I represent everyone, and we have, Prince George's County is a diverse county, and I believe that this is a hard question possibly, but it's one that we need to be real about, we need to talk about it, and we need to ensure that we are training a new, younger generation that can take over from where we are and understand exactly what we're doing. The terminology of the vocabulary that we're using for the budget changes annually. The programs keep changing, and we can barely keep up with everything that's going on. So we have a community out there. They want to know what's going on. They want the best for their students, and I think that we have a responsibility to ensure that they are receiving it. And so that's why I'm asking this question. It's not only for the Spanish-speaking persons, it's for French-speaking people, and we know that there are just a lot of persons out there. They want to know, and they want the best for their students, and the parents are interested, and I feel they have a right to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. As I indicated earlier, I was at a PTA meeting last night, and it was a good meeting. And although it was in the south end of the county, and a lot of people do not think that there are a lot of Latino students and families in that area, but it is growing as quickly as other parts of the county. And there were quite a few at the meeting last night, and we were able to have translation services. So as we talked about this issue or as this process, then individuals were able to communicate in their language. But hear what parents are asking in general, and many have indicated a support for the more localized decision-making process because they understand the differences between and among schools. They are asking questions about how they become involved, who is involved, and what mechanisms will be in place to ensure that they are able to provide recommendations, suggestions, and input in the budget development process. And so that's where we're working with principals to build their capacity to actually engage with their communities in order to do that.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the efforts that you all are putting forth. Our principals, I think sometimes they are on overload with so many things going on in the community, and I may be out of place a little bit right here, but I know recently in my district, in District 3, I think we've had a loss of life since November of probably at least 6 to 8 persons, and it's taken a toll on our leadership, the principals, and everyone. And I'd like to commend those persons for stepping up to the plate to help the families that were involved in the loss of life in whatever situation it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Dr. Hite, Mr. Stansky, do you see that you may have some adjustments to the budget based on transportation recommendations or reports?
Those are contained inside of the recommendations, Madam Chair.
You don't see any changes?
We are doing a very low estimate with respect to what the governor may propose, so we may see some increases there. But we've built in what we are anticipated with respect to changes with regard to transportation. We built all of those things into what we're proposing this evening.
So I think because that was such a, well, that is such a critical issue, and it was a major issue, as you know, in our last budget cycle that included in part of the budget presentation, that we actually talk about that in terms of what that looks like or would look like in terms of your recommendations for adjustments, changes, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good way to do our work sessions, maybe to separate those out so that we're looking at all non-school related things like transportation, school food service, custodial maintenance, all of those things that are in support of schools. Look at that in one meeting, perhaps, in one work session, and then respond to those questions, talk about those plans, and then move to a meeting that just talks about schools and really talk about how schools will deliver certain services, what are we seeing as trends throughout the development of individual school budgets. The other thing that I think is really important is the process that we've used in the development of the student-based budgeting. It actually is encouraging that schools have been working to develop their budgets already. and they've had a couple of trial runs this year already for their budget based on those projections. We, as you recall, in past years, most schools do not begin that process until after the board takes action on the budget. So it is really backing the whole process up so that schools can begin thinking about those changes as they think about master schedules, course offerings, and different structures within their schools that are more responsive to the needs, their individual needs, as opposed to us trying to figure that out for the whole system.
Yeah, and I think the targeting will also help, sort of to Ms. Waller's point, will help parents have a better understanding of specific issues that are affected in the budget. And then just a couple of things that you can add to the list as well. Well, for the funding chart comparison on page 8, I would actually include the enrollment numbers for those jurisdictions. I mean, the top 6, I think, were $18,000 per student, where we're $12,000 and $11,000 per student. I would add that information. And then also, if you can include in your discussion going forward, what are your checkpoints at every level, including Dr. Arbogast, in terms of, so we now have student-based budgeting. How are you going to know it's working or not working, and what are your what's your data dashboard for it, I guess, in terms of knowing before next, before the next session comes up that we actually are on target and that it's working. I hear a lot of concerns from my colleagues, particularly in terms of, understanding the provisions of this budget and how that's going to work. So I just encourage you to, have reporting mechanisms in place and be able to report that to us in the budget cycle. Ms. Higgins.
Thank you. I guess I wanted to go back to the comment about bilingual advertisement and publicity on this, and would encourage that maybe, I know that there are a number of radio stations that are Spanish radio stations that are heard extensively by our community, and then also there are the English-speaking radio stations that people listen to, and I would assume that we might be able to have some access to public service announcements that would not be of any cost that could advertise our work in this progress, so I would encourage that. I am struck, as I'm sure by many of my other colleagues on the podium, that what a different discussion from our beginning of our discussion of the budget last year. I know we have things to look at and to look seriously at, but it just feels like almost a relief. And one of the things that really brings that home for me was the numbers that you gave in student enrollment, that when we looked here last year, we were thinking that cutting the preschool, pre-K program was going to dramatically reduce the number of children we were going to be able to serve. And that hasn't happened. In fact, has had a slightly increase. So is there any understanding as to how that happened, that we went from full day to half day? And am I wrong about that?
You are wrong about that. The numbers actually did drop in pre-K. But what's interesting, Ms. Higgins, is that the numbers dropped in regions, but not across the district. So we have full programs in the Northwest. We probably don't have enough seats in the Northwest, and we have empty seats in the South. And we think it's very much around the income eligibility. So as we go through this process, we are trying to maintain the same number of pre-K sites, but by moving some of them, we think that we can actually fill.
Capture up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it wasn't as...
That income eligibility is what's hurting us in the South, we think.
Okay, all right. And then is there less flexibility for school-based budgeting for elementary schools versus middle or high schools? Are more positions locked, let me use our new language, in the elementary than in the middle and the high school?
So I think after all this conversation, schools are going to look very similar to the way they look this year. And high schools have a lot of teachers, so there appears to be flexibility, but they have the same priorities. They want to get kids in advanced placement. They have to get kids to pass the HSAs, core college preparation. So there's a lot of energy and closely examining your program, but I think you're going to be surprised that the programs are going to look very similar to the way they do this year.
Okay. And you mentioned in the presentation that the information to the principals will go out tomorrow, even though the board hasn't voted on the boundary issue. So what information are you asking them that's going to also affect the January 18th vote?
So we have enrollment projections, as you said, in the vote for schools that are affected by boundary changes will be on the 18th. So what we're going to do for those schools is we're going to have to send them 2 budgets, one with boundary changes included, one with boundary changes not included. And we're going to just have to ask them to prepare budgets for both scenarios. And then when the vote occurs, we will then be able to, we'll then determine which one they will use ultimately.
Okay. And then my last question really is, we did in our presentation talking about farm increase and our lower pupil personal allocation, and how are we balancing those educational needs and offering the perspective to families who really are looking and want to be assured that we are providing a rigorous educational opportunity for their children, and that appropriate funding is being given to their child who may not have special educational weights. I know we have Ms. Harvard sitting with us as an example that we can produce academic rigor, and that there are many other examples of that, but I think that really needs to be part of the discussion as well. Amen. Amen.
So the accountability measures for the schools and the principals are still the same. We do expect high student achievement across the board. The challenge is, how do you structure to get that? And that means meeting the needs of all students, regardless of the weights. And we have the rollout of Common Core. Virtually all the initiatives we're working on are really towards improving instructional practice in the classroom.
I guess if we spend the very real, sobering information about our farms are increasing, our pupil personal is low, that if somebody, and we're losing students, that people may not get the balanced approach, that we have a very good educational system in there, and students are thriving in that system. So I just am trying how to provide one piece of information and then also provide the other. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Ms. Beck?
2 things. Can you also describe how Title I fits into this funding scenario, and the Title I bar that seems to shift so that we know the name of the school that is a Title I and what the bar is. The other is, you said that our special populations, like our like Benjamin Falloy, would have a different type of a formula added to it. But you'll be including all of the different types of children. So we will know the cost of the middle college student, the cost of the alternative ed student, all of them. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Great. Thank you. I'm adding that to my last set.
Dr. Arbogast and administration, I want to thank you for the work that you guys have already done on this. I talked to a lot of employees. I've heard a lot of comments from principals that an amount was given to them. Once they plugged in their current staff, they're either in the red or they have no school resource funds. And I want to talk to you about, or if you can explain to me the timeline, because the principals have been working on this for, I assume, months. And so can you just explain the timeline? Or, actually, if you can just post it online just to save time. You don't have to respond right now. I know we have a lot of students from Forestville Military Academy here who probably want to go home. So you can just email that to me. Thanks.
Ms. Waller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Skansky, on the chart, there were numbers for the last, I believe it was 5 years, for the ELL and farms. I'm wondering if you could provide us the breakdown of numbers of the ELL and farms by district, by school board district. I mean, not tonight, but I mean, is that possible? You know, the trend of what's happening, so we can see what's happening across the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the questions tonight, Dr. Hite. As I said, we'll get a schedule out Monday and submit them accordingly with dates of responses from the administration. And I think last year we had between 3 to 4 days. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to the next item. We have 9 registered speakers on discussion item 6.2. Just a reminder, you've been registered to speak in public comment forum where the Board of Education will listen to your comments. All registered speakers have 3 minutes. You may not relinquish your time to a registered or unregistered individual. When the buzzer sounds, we ask that you complete the sentence that you are on only. Please feel free to leave a copy of your statement in the file box with Mr. Coleman. We request that you use titles rather than names, refrain from profanity and derogatory terms. Your adherence to these guidelines will ensure that public comment goes smoothly. And our first speaker on the boundary improvements recommendation by the superintendent is Cassandra Nesmith. Please come forward. Sharon Renee Sims.
Ms. Sharon Renee Sims. I'm going to ask that Colonel Logan, the highest ranking student cadet at Forestville Military Academy, lead and request the participants that are in this chamber representing Forestville to stand after I finish with my comments. While budgetary, declining enrollment, and demographics are the major factors in the research and development findings in these boundary proposals, which relocate programs and students, Forestville is the only cited school with an elite program that will be abolished. I could come before this governing body this evening on behalf of so many, but most importantly, the student body, currently enrolled at FMA. These students are upset, and rightfully so. The pending proposal would virtually put a school within a school, thereby disrupting the sheer foundation of the current program. The atmosphere and the teaching that these students routinely are governed by, starting with truth, honor, knowledge, and service, will not be shared by the entire student body in their routine academics if this proposed change is implemented. While many come to you citing opposition concerning matters such as this, I also come with a possible solution. First and foremost, Forestville is a model that can serve more of the community's youth in Prince George's if we expose the military platform and the academic accomplishment to the general public of Forestville Military Academy, not Forestville High School. Currently, there are students from many areas in the county that are and have been empowered by this curriculum, and if parents and guardians are enlightened, I am almost ensured that an enrollment for these same areas will increase. I am humbly requesting that if not stopped, that this pending change should be delayed so that a suitable resolution can be reached to leave intact the current program. Let the state of Maryland, the county of Prince George's, keep this flagship military academy. It is the right thing to do. I am extending an invitation to each one of you to help us fill the required seats with individuals that are from all of our neighborhoods under the current platform. Help to continue to build the 5-star nationally known educational facility Forestville Military Academy is bound to become by the combined efforts of this school board, county, state, administrative staff, students, parents, and outside contributors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sims.
Madam Chair, I have a folder here with my comments, and also in this folder, we have signatures from probably the entire students from Forestville that are addressed to this body.
Thank you so much. Mr. Steve. Thank you. Mr. Steve Krukar.
Well, good evening, Dr. Hite. Good evening, Board of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First of all, what I'd like to say is this, is I want to applaud the work that you're doing with regard to boundary changes, because I really like what I see in terms of the various proposals on that. When I look at the proposals over here, you have, of course, the proposal for boundary change, boundary improvement for Yorktown and Rockledge. And the way the proposals are stated in a rather interesting way, if not approved. I almost prefer to state the changes in a very positive way. If approved, I believe Yorktown will have an appropriate student population to its size, as well as Rockledge will have appropriate student population to its size. We both have approximately the same state-rated capacity schools. Also, too, it talks about here, students at Saddlebrook West are residing in that area. They will, in my estimation, have the opportunity to walk to school as opposed to having to take a bus ride to school. Some may choose to take a bus if that's appropriate, but I think walking will become a viable option. One thing that I want to mention, too, and I want to again say thank you for all of your efforts with regard to this, too, is that I was very pleased to hear from our PTA president, Kim Ryan, that the mayor of Bowie, as well as several council members, have, at least in a general respect, weighed in on the issue, indicating their interest in the issue and the fact that they are monitoring the situation, and we're very pleased with that also. Now, one area I just want to bring up, too, and I think this is really apropos to the whole boundary change situation, and that is this, the student-based budgeting. That is a type of budgeting that I really, really see as very positive, very proactive. I like it. I support it. And my hope and prayer is you all do the same thing, too, because I think the students are going to become the winners. Having said that, I see a definite relationship between student-based budgeting and the various boundary improvements that are being proposed at this time, which certainly I hope on January 18th you'll be voting on. The relationship is this. Given the various schools and the various populations of schools, as I understand this proposal, correct me if I'm wrong, the schools with the greatest number of students would have the largest budgets, of course, for the most part, although there are some fixed instruments and there are fixed amounts of money that are placed in budget. But schools like Yorktown that are very small, again, we only have about 247 students, and we're about 210 students under capacity, would have very small budgets to work with. So I see the boundary improvements as being an improvement not only for Yorktown, but other schools that may be facing a similar situation. Now, with regard to the vote in that, I understand the vote is supposed to take place on the 18th of January, and my encouragement to you is to hold that vote on the 18th of January and to please support these boundary changes. And again, I'd like to say thank you very, very much for all that you're doing. And again, my name is Steve Krukar, and I'm a parent of children at Yorktown Elementary School. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Krukar. Sheila Daniels Blackwell. Cortabia Britton.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and other esteemed staff. My name is Cortavia Britton, and I'm a 2008 graduate of Forestville Military Academy, and I am now a graduating senior at North Carolina A&T State University. I was at Forestville when it first changed from a high school to a military academy. And this program isn't like any program I've ever been to or I've ever been a part of. It's not like French immersion or performing arts. This program actually crosses into the social structure of the school. If this program is not continued, this would definitely aid in the breakdown of the military discipline that has been so fought to be a part of the school. No longer will you have a united student body, but as was stated before, two battling societies within one school. And then also, you won't have one set of standards that is present today. And like I said, our program is unique, and I am a product of that program. When I graduated with a full scholarship to college. My brother will be a product of this academy, and so will the students that stood before you. And if you want more students with goals, dedication, loyalty, like the ones that stood here and like myself, then please keep this academy a single unit. I appeal to the board to keep Forestville, which is a JROTC honor unit with distinction, of the only public military academy in the state of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Britton, and congratulations to you. Angela Jeffries.
Good evening, Superintendent and esteemed members of the school board. Thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Angela Jeffries, and I stand before you tonight representing the community of Rockledge Elementary School, as well as parents of students living in the subdivision of Saddlebrook West and other nearby communities that would be affected by the proposed changes. As you're aware, this round of proposed boundary changes would relocate students living in these communities from Rockledge Elementary to Yorktown. And by this petition of over 100 signatures, the Rockledge community strongly opposes this proposal and urges the board to keep the boundaries intact. Rockledge is an excellent elementary school, one of the best in Prince George's County, with a strong record of academic excellence. And not to be disparaging, but the record will show that it does have a stronger record of excellence and MSA stats than that of Yorktown Elementary. And that is of significant concern to us tonight. It is what brings us here. The Rockledge staff has high expectations for our children's success, consistently monitoring their performance and attendance. I personally know of Rockledge families who've had performance issues of varying kinds, and those families have received personal attention from both the administration, both in school and at home, to resolve those matters. Parents represented by this letter will attest to the fact that Rockledge offers programs that address the particularized needs of their children as well as the general population, keeping them on track to ensure their success. That is yet another reason why we fight to be here tonight and oppose this proposal. I could continue to detail so many great things about Rockledge: the rigorous curriculum, extended learning opportunities for those who do not meet academic standards, and the well-trained and certified teachers, but I won't go on in the interest of time. What I will again highlight is the wide disparity, or the gap rather, in MSA stats between the two schools, particularly in the minority demographic. It gives us great pause. These statistics are highlighted actually in my package here for you tonight, so I urge you to please read them and strongly consider them going forward. We as parents of Rockledge and the surrounding communities, affected communities, stand strong and prepared to use our voices and our votes to ensure that these proposed changes do not affect our children. We ask that you hear us tonight. And finally, our strongest argument: as an alternative to the proposed changes, we would provide a solution and urge the board to grandfather the current families living in those communities so that our children may continue to matriculate through Rockledge Elementary. And last thing I'd like to say is I'd like to dispel the notion that families and children living in Saddlebrook West could walk to Yorktown. I live in Saddlebrook West. I would not have my 7-year-old walk to the front of the subdivision, much less down busy Racetrack Road to Yorktown Elementary. On behalf of the undersigned, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffries. Cynthia Sykes. Kyle Thomas. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Sykes.
Thank you to the board and Superintendent Hite for hearing us this evening. Forgive me, I had limited time to prepare my comments, but I'm coming to you this evening to implore you not to dissect Heather Hills Elementary School through forced busing and the boundary changes that are proposed. I'm voicing my opposition as well as the opposition of my neighbors in the Heather Hills Elementary family and in the neighboring community. I am gravely concerned by the superintendent's opening statements as well as the unclear transportation estimates. I am hoping that the spirit of compromise and alternatives can be addressed in this particular issue. When you look at the TAG program and student-based budgeting, those are great programs. We think that this TAG program is great and that student-based budgeting, and there are more TAG seats needed in the county. There are 7 schools that house them, as we all know. However, there are empty seats in the county. Heather Hills is not one of those places where there are empty seats. My opposition comes also at the notion that the segregation of TAG versus comprehensive non-TAG children is necessary for a successful school. We live in a community with a successful school, a cohesive neighborhood, and the TAG-centered concept of being TAG exclusively is unfounded. When you look at your pilot, and it's been less than a year that you all have been working on this pilot, I would almost look at it as a social experiment. I call John Hopkins the gifted and talented program. They don't validate that TAG children have to be exclusive in a school on themselves at any point. The fallacy in the principle that TAG only completely discounts the neighboring community, the walkers, the resurgence of an older community and our property values, as well as the academic potential of the comprehensive children that share facilities and resources with the TAG children currently. Heather Hills is one of your highest performing schools year after year. Regarding budget, yes, there are budget concerns, but there's also a responsibility to provide quality education and hire trained teachers, including those with tags, at all of the schools. I believe that's why we're moving to STEM and more comprehensive curriculum. The tag-only center principle rests on the definition that there are 2 classes of students in Prince George's County, tag and non-tag. You know, not too long ago, there was another social experiment placed on 2 classes of students. And I want to read a definition for you, talking about separating tag from non-tag from that. And I want you to consider as a governing body that how can you ethically and constitutionally support innovation for the student population and not just the tag families when you listen to this definition. You mentioned, Superintendent, value in students, partnerships, and families. Heather Hills is a model example for Prince George's County, as our statistics indicate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sykes. Please leave us the definition. We'd like to read that. Kyle Thomas, PTA President, Rockledge Elementary.
I'd like to thank Dr. Hite and the board for allowing us the forum to talk to you. I'm the PTA president, as you stated, 6 years at Rockledge. Rockledge is a close-knit community, and Rockledge Elementary School is the center of that community. This community includes Saddlebrook West, Patuxent Riding, Kimberwick, as well as Jericho Park. These families have been together for almost a decade. Their concerns are they don't want to leave Rockledge. They don't understand why they have to go to an underperforming school. The test scores are lower at Yorktown compared to all the surrounding schools in the city of Bowie. Parents have stated they're not done with the fight, and they would rather pull their children out of public school and go to alternatives private. So the people that you feel that you're going to get the students at Yorktown, you're really not going to get that many. When we went through the boundary change in 2006, I think, 2007, Rockledge did lose students, but Yorktown did not gain. Rockledge lost students because their parents did not want to go through it again, and we lost several families to private school or to surrounding counties, Howard, and Anne Arundel County as well. As you look at the test scores, people were telling me test scores don't matter. If they don't matter, why do we take them? We compared Yorktown with Seat Pleasant Elementary. The reason we chose that school because they have relatively the same amount of students. I was talking to a Yorktown parent. They said, well, our test scores are low because we have a lot of free and reduced lunches. The free and reduced lunches for Seabrook is 33%. The free and reduced lunch for Yorktown is less than 20%. The special needs students at Seabrook outperformed the special needs students at Yorktown. The special needs students at Seabrook, 94%. The special needs students at Yorktown, 42%. The general population at Yorktown was test scores 78%. At Seat Pleasant, at Seat Pleasant it's 95%. In conclusion, I asked, how do you allow schools to exist that continuously underperform? Then justify sending students to that school. I asked for you to postpone your boundary change until this school has increased their test scores. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Arlethea White. Okay, Dr. Hite, that concludes our public comment. And so I'm going to yield to you for presentation. I certainly understand if some have to leave, but strongly encourage when you come and speak on these issues that you also, as possible, listen to the presentation because questions are asked and answers are given as a result. And in addition to that, just as a reminder, there's the website if you want to look at the board meeting that way. But we just strongly encourage you to not just come and speak, but to also pay attention to the presentation and some of the intimate details. I know board members have asked a lot of questions. I have too. And your questions help us to deliberate on these issues. Dr. Hite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that, we will move to the presentation of a discussion item, and that is an outline of my proposed recommendations for boundary improvements. And as you are aware and have heard this evening, the board is scheduled to take a vote on January 18th on this matter. And what we want to do tonight is do a very quick review of the boundary improvements in that presentation, really talk about the process and sequence of events to date and the types of changes, but we've received a lot of questions and a lot of recommendations and suggestions as we've gone out to the communities, as we have participated in these public forums and heard from all of parents and in many cases students. And we wanted to provide some responses to the board with respect to the types of things we heard in those meetings, if there have been any adjustments to the presentation, and what will happen in the event we continue with the current boundary changes. So with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Coleman-Potter to walk us through this brief presentation, and then we'll be glad to entertain any board member questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hite, members of the board. On this first slide, you'll see the process and sequence of events that we have actually followed during this boundary improvement process. At this point, we have not only received public comment through 3 of our public forums that were actually done in North Central and South County, but also 4 public hearings that were done during the months of November and December. We also are in the process of compiling all of the documentation and correspondence that we've received from the public so that the board can have a really good picture of how the public has actually commented and reacted to the boundary improvements. You will see noted on January 18th, the Board of Education vote, and then as customary and required by board policy, we would of course mail notice to any impacted families of the board's actions. Just in terms of also capturing the types of changes that were introduced during this particular round of boundary improvements, there were minor boundary adjustments that were actually only impact up to 20 students. We've not listed those for you again tonight, but they, of course, are available in your board docs information. Significant boundary adjustments, there are 7 of those that we will discuss tonight. Grade structure changes as well as program changes. Just in terms of the significant boundary changes, and some of these we'll actually have more dialogue on because some of them we've received significant public commentary and some of them we have not received commentary from the public really at all. The first one is Highland Park and Oakcrest, and that's the consolidation of those 2 schools. We'll talk more about those in this presentation. The major correspondence that we've received on this change is that Highland Park be able to retain its name. Kingsford, Perrywood, and Pointer Ridge is really a boundary change that worked toward cleaning the boundary, making sure that children were not passing by elementary schools to go to another elementary school, and we have not really heard from the community in terms of this particular boundary change. Same thing would be for the Brandywine, James Ryder Randall, and Walden Woods elementary change. Of course, we will have further conversation tonight on the Rockledge and Yorktown elementary change that we are suggesting in the boundary proposal. Lamont and Robert Frost is a significant change, but it's not one that we've received public comment on. Heather Hills, Kenilworth, and Tulip Grove, as well as the Glenarden Woods, is really toward creating tag specialty centers and increasing the tag seats in the county from 1,800 now to over 2,400 with the creation of these specialty centers. In terms of our grade structure change, and this really has to do with moving 6th grade into 7th and 8th grade buildings, we have had significant public comment on one of these, being Dwight Eisenhower, and I'll talk more about that one in the presentation. But we do think it's important to note what the research is really telling us about the 7th and 8th grade only structures that we have in the county. And certainly we know that it's not only the least desirable in terms of middle school structures, but also we need to make sure we provide this structural change so that we can provide more rigorous academic opportunities to our students who could be in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade composition. Regardless of the grade configuration, of course, we know that it's most important for teachers to understand the adolescent learner. And so this also gives us the opportunity to more target our professional development to our teachers who teach our middle school students, but also lessen the transitions for our middle school students as well. I'll now move into the program changes. Some of these you've heard public comment on tonight, but we do want to provide for you not only the basis of the change, but also what happens if we decide or if the board decides not to enact the change. The first one is around Forestville Military Academy. It's important to note that since 2008, Forestville Military Academy has actually reduced in terms of student enrollment. In 2008, it had a student enrollment of almost 1,998 students, but this year the enrollment is at 738 students. If not approved, then the boundary students will continue to be automatically assigned to the military academy, regardless of their interest in participating. Currently, we have 90 students who live in the Forestville community who opt not to go to Forestville Military Academy. So where you see at the bottom that approximately 46 students now being bused to alternate schools would actually be returned to Forestville, we're actually backing out of that 90 number students who are either seniors this year or upcoming seniors. So I did want to make sure we were very clear about what the numbers are suggesting. This is the only mandated assignment that we have in terms of a specialty area in the county, and each year a school must be designated to actually serve as the alternate placement for the students who opt out of the program. And as a result, we're also required to provide bus service for those students who actually go to another school and receive a comparable education and also program service, but not in their neighborhood school. The next one that we've heard significant conversation on is Dwight Eisenhower. Of course, if this grade structure change is not approved in the boundary recommendation, then Deerfield Run, Laurel, Montpelier, and Oaklands will continue to operate in excess of their state-rated capacities, and we have those numbers in case the board is interested in those as well tonight. Dwight Eisenhower, of course, would continue to operate significantly under state capacity, but more importantly, the academic opportunities for our sixth graders will continue to be limited due to the fact that they are attending elementary schools and cannot take advantage of things like algebra, advanced mathematics, or foreign languages that students in middle schools have the opportunity to experience. Highland Park and Oakcrest. While I mentioned in just my introductory remarks that one of our strongest commentaries on this particular boundary change has been for Highland Park because of its historic value to keep its name, we did want to make sure that the board also and the general public understand that if not approved, Highland Park's population will continue to actually diminish. Right now, the building has a state-rated capacity, which means it has the capacity to hold 550 students, but it currently operates at around 180 students. So certainly we think that Highland Park could not only hold more students, but certainly it's an opportunity for us to increase the student population there. Oakcrest, which is currently a school that also has TAG, without transfers, the enrollment would actually fall. And so we do see it as an opportunity to combine both schools and still have space in Highland Park. Even more importantly, with this particular change is an opportunity for us to move Judy Hoyer Montessori to Oakcrest and then provide 7th and 8th grade, which currently we do not do for that particular site because of the limited space in the current Judy Hoyer building. So we see this as an opportunity to not only increase Montessori in terms of 7th and 8th grade for Judy Hoyer, but also to take care of Highland Park and Oakcrest in terms of their shrinking enrollment as well. Yorktown and Rockledge, the board has heard commentary on this one as well tonight. Of course, Yorktown is operating significantly under-enrolled, but we also wanted to make sure that the board and the general public is aware that Rockledge also is actually overcrowded. They are operating in excess of their state-rated capacity, and as a result, they have to utilize portable units to accommodate the students' population, the school's population. In addition, I think the last bullet is important, that students residing in Saddlebrook West actually ride on a circular route in terms of getting to Rockledge, and they actually pass not only Whitehall but also Yorktown. So they are passing the school in order to go to another school. And so we certainly see this as an opportunity to improve our efficiency and also academic programming as well. The next site that we've heard significant commentary from the community would be Heather Hills. In this particular instance, this is the only one part of a system of creating TAG centers and also increasing TAG seats in the community and as well as in the county. The first bullet I do think is really important is we have continuing conversations around student-based budgeting, and that is that the funding that is currently provided to the school because of the small comprehensive population would be inadequate for them to continue to separate and staff separate comprehensive and TAG classes. It would actually be necessary to create combination classes next year across grade levels based on the number of comprehensive students that we have per grade, which now ranges from 10 to 12 comprehensive students. So for every 2 TAG classrooms at Heather Hills, there's actually 1 comprehensive classroom. In addition, we talked about the opportunity to create additional TAG seats, which is also an opportunity to create and also keep children within the system that have been identified as TAG. You'll see that the current proposal will increase TAG seats across the county by 500. Tulip Grove would also remain underutilized if this proposal is not enacted by the board, and there would also continue to be an enrollment imbalance between those 3 schools. The note at the bottom actually notates that there would be approximately 65 students in Heather Hills Walk Zone that would be bused to Kenilworth, but I want to make sure that it's very clear that that number also includes the 6th grade students who would now go to Kenmore. The next 2 slides or maybe 3, actually has the before and after, just in terms of effects of the boundary grade and the program adjustments. And we did want to make sure that the board and the general public have this information as you go through the deliberation process. So not only does it notate the SRC for each school, but also the before and after based on the boundary proposal, as well as the seats that are available and the type of change that the superintendent is recommending. Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. That concludes our reports, and we're more than happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman-Potter. I have Mr. Burrows, Ms. Higgins, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Jackson, Ms. Beck.
Dr. Potter, once again, thank you and your staff for the work that you've done in this. I guess my main concern with this is moving 6th grade to middle school. You mentioned that you have research that supports doing that, and I would like to see that research because I have research here from the Stanford Institute of Public Policy that says 6th graders should remain in elementary school, and it's pretty clear, and I've read it a few times, and I would really like to see the exact research that you have that suggests it's better for student achievement if we remove 6th graders from elementary school into middle school. If you could provide that for me, I would appreciate that. You can just email that to me, and I'm sure the full board would like to see that as well. Also, I want to, with the tax, actually you mentioned increasing space at the Montessori school in the northern part of the county. I want to know the status of moving John Hanson French Immersion and Montessori to Shugart.
Yes, sir. That move is actually scheduled for the next school year, and I mean 2012-2013.
Okay, so we don't need to vote on it again. I know we voted on it a few times, but is that set in stone? Can I go back and let the community know that it is for sure not going to be delayed, and that's actually going to happen?
Once you approve the budget, it's in the budget. So it's in the budget as a part of the innovation. We're trying to expand those opportunities, so that's one of the examples.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess my last question deals with TAG. You're moving from having TAG in each of the schools to having TAG centers. That's
no, sir, that's not actually the proposal. The proposal is to increase and have 3 TAG centers, but to also increase TAG seats. So we would increase from 1,800, which would mean to 2,300, which would mean we would not be decreasing TAG seats in any of the existing sites.
Okay, so for example, TAG is at Avalon Elementary, so it will still be in. Okay, absolutely. Thank you so much, and I definitely support that component of your plan.
Thank you. Just for clarity purposes, Dr. Hite, I sent you all a list of questions, and one of those included what was the district's philosophy around TAG versus comprehensive, and you did send that back. I appreciate you responding to that. And I think as we have this discussion, if I recall, one of the things that you said was, as a district, we're not able to necessarily provide TAG centers across the district, so it's not a conversation of TAG versus comprehensive. It's just that we have such a huge requests now for TAG and approvals for TAG, if you will, or TAG identified students, that you have to make the room necessary for them, and that was the basis of your proposal, but not necessarily a philosophical reason. Is that correct? I just wanted to.
That is correct.
Because I've gotten a lot of questions around that, and to be able to answer that.
This is not a philosophical shift of TAG versus comprehensive.
Right.
This is solely to address the issue of so many students being identified that we cannot serve both in comprehensive programs or in centers.
And Ms. Higgins is next, I promise. But the other quick question: did you? So I know that particularly in District 5 we have Heather Hills, but are there areas where you've identified, like Heather Hills, where the majority of the students in the building are actually TAG students, and so that the neighborhood community is not, in other words, if we didn't have TAG at Heather Hills, would we be able to support the school? I'm trying to understand that.
It's just not enough students. It would be 100 students, I believe. 90 students.
90 students.
that live in the comprehensive boundary.
And the tag students that includes the neighborhood students who are also tag identified, or is that different? Do you understand what I'm asking you? So if you're not just giving me comprehensive numbers, you're giving me the neighborhood numbers, is that right?
Yeah, in the 90, that includes those that are from that neighborhood that are in the tag program and the comprehensive students.
90.
90, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Higgins?
Yes, thank you. That number is a little startling. I hadn't heard that that's what we were talking about at Heather Hills. Is that the school? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I wanted to ask on the slide on page number 5. I just wanted to, I know I've been verbally told this, but I wanted to check to make sure that it's still accurate information and suggest maybe we amend the slide if it is accurate information. That Kenmore, I guess it's not coming up, on Kenmore Middle, that are also going, the 6th grade special ed students from Robert Frost are also going to Kenmore Middle. Yeah, I know you're nodding. It would be comforting to see it on this. Yeah. All right. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, you're next.
Can Ms. Higgins clarify? The Robert Frost children go to Thomas Johnson, correct? Yeah, I mean, they do.
They go to Thomas Johnson and Charles Carroll, but the special ed children who have the board
because
voted
they
a
have
number of years ago, Kenmore didn't have a 6th grade pick them up.
I thought I was hearing something different.
And I just want to make sure that we're not going to lose in this the 6th grade special ed kids who have been at Robert Frost because Kenmore wasn't having.
Thank
That's
you.
what I'm saying.
Dr. Hite, in general, overall, how many students participate in ROTC and PGCPS? More or less, what's our number?
We'll have to get that for you, Ms. Johnson. I do not have that number.
Okay. This is a what-if hypothetical. If we, even though I know we have Navy, Army, Air Force, Marine, we have 4 military contingents here. If, just the what if Forestville Military Academy building was filled to capacity with all ROTC students, irrespective of designation or putting all of the Army or all of the Air Force, filling that building, then we have neighborhood children who would now not be able to go there and would need to still be transported out. Correct?
That's
or
correct.
Not? Okay. Is there any level of value to filling the building with all ROTC with the proviso we may not be able to transport, but students could go there for that program, which would allow us to offset the cost of transportation to those that have to go there because they can't go to their neighborhood school. Again, this is a what if. You see, you got to be able to propose some level of discussion to get something. I don't necessarily have a preference, but one, the building is underutilized. That building was renovated, is it 10 years, 12 years ago? We had this all-facility renovation. And from that point forward, it was filled capacity, and now it is declining. We have got to do something about the empty seats in high school. And one of the things that it does is by offering certain programming that children care about. So, one option, if the military academy building called Forestville was filled to capacity with young people who come from across a regional area, perhaps looking at another underutilized high school facility to take up this other half, that might be one solution. However, there would have to be some way to offset the transportation issue. I'm not suggesting you necessarily run a module for that, but I'm just saying you cannot keep asking, we want, please don't, without understanding the dynamics that in the system we are dealing with thousands and thousands of empty high school seats, and the enrollment is still declining. My next piece is...
Ms. Johnson, before you go to the next piece, we have 2,700 unique course enrollments. That's course enrollments. That does not mean unique students, and so that number would be lower. So I would, I hate to do approximations, but I would say around 2,000 students that are in ROTC.
And the capacity of Forestville building facility is what?
1,400.
Okay. All right. Next commentary slash questioning. One of the things that has been of concern to me as we deal with boundary is the movement of children to do the balancing between Rockledge and Yorktown. When you cite data, it does not let you feel the heartbeat or see the smile of a child. These are our children. And while we are looking at numbers, enrollment, to try to do a balance for financial reasons to make it feasible to continue to operate schools without creating dynamics of having to close down an entire building and transport all of the group of children in the smallest, when you have within a mile geographic radius, more or less, you can balance. To me, Mr. Superintendent, I submit to you that the option for providing children the opportunity to be closer to home, which they actually would be, I believe, they're not going in the opposite direction, and relieve the overcrowding, but more importantly, we have an investment in these children, and I am not satisfied when we began talking about our children as numbers of decline or not as good, because they are smiling faces and they are bright, beautiful children, and I will not accept talking about them in that way.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Jackson?
My first question is about Forestville Military Academy. I've heard what they had to say, and I understand that it won't be as prestigious once it's a school within a school, and I completely agree with them in terms of the fact that it should stay as the way it is. But my question is, even if we were to change it to a school within a school, besides the 90 students that opt out, what would we be doing to get it the capacity, well, the amount of students enrolled up higher, since that's still like only a little bit above half?
Ms. Jackson, first of all, we actually have provided, or we tried to provide, an enrollment description to the board, and it appears that the application process has actually decreased. So as I said in my opening remarks, the school opened in 2008 as a military academy with almost 1,000 children or students, and now it's down to 700, and that number has steadily declined every single year. So in terms of your question was, what is the school doing to increase their enrollment?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying besides like the 90 students that currently opt out, are we going to be, I mean, what other students do we plan to move to that school, if you know what I'm saying?
Currently, it would just be the students within the Forestville attendance area. So the 90 students, while I described that number, it would actually be 46, because some of that 90 includes students who are either seniors this year or upcoming seniors for next year. And we would not ask them at that point in their high school career to go back to Forestville. We would allow them to continue and graduate from the school where they're currently placed.
And so that would raise a number to about like 750 out of 1,400?
That is correct.
So we would change the whole school for 50 students?
The thought process is to make sure that we are providing not only within the neighborhood the process of educating students closer there, but also reducing the transportation costs. Also, the other part of that is that, as Ms. Johnson just alluded to, we have enormous amounts of empty seats at our high school areas, in our high school arena. So Forestville is not uncommon in that particular domain, but we are transporting children out because of the mandatory assignment to other high schools, as opposed to allowing them to stay within their own neighborhood and attending school there.
So in terms of that, the fact that you're saying that there are other high schools that are underpopulated, does that mean that we could ultimately end up moving students from one underpopulated school to the next underpopulated school?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay.
That is correct.
My next question is about the middle school, the 6th grade middle school that Mr. Burrows spoke about earlier. I went to Gwynn Park Middle School recently, and they were talking about how middle school is the worst years of your life, so why would they want to make it longer? And so one of the things that they suggested, and I just wanted to ask if we've looked into this, was that they felt like the schedule change from an elementary school student to a middle school student was too big of a jump. So have we looked into keeping 6th grade in elementary school but structuring it more like a middle school schedule, because they felt like you still need to get that recess, that time to let out your energy, and you need to be around people closer to your age group, because 8th grade is kind of, even though it's only 2 years, it's kind of a different maturity level, but that you're exposed to how a middle school is structured.
So the optimum middle school schedule is based on a team of 110 to 120 students. And then what you do is you have 4 content, and then you have your elective teachers built on that. And if you'll recall back to the student-based budgeting, you'll notice that there was actually a weight for middle school because they actually have more options. We have almost none of our elementary schools have 6th grades that large to make that team time. So it kind of forces our 6th grades and elementaries to run an elementary schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Ms. Beck?
It seems like every time we talk about boundaries, we have some concerns about that the 5th grader who's moving into the 6th grade for 1 year, and then they'll move into another school. So the example would be the Oakcrest 6th grade, or the Oakcrest current 5th graders, who will be 6th graders at Highland Park for 1 year, and then they'll move to wherever they go to 6th grade. Kenmore. And Kenmore doesn't have a 6th grade. So is it in the scenario somewhere where you're looking to make Kenmore a 6th grade? Or I'm concerned about the transition children in that 6th grade year for spending 1 year at Highland Park and then going somewhere else. I just think that's, I think we went through this with Ms. Johnson in Laurel. It's just the boundary change 6th graders who are affected. I think, you understand what I'm saying, Jonathan? And I wonder how many taking Oakcrest, and I don't know if there's other that are affected this round, but taking the Oakcrest rising 6th grader, how many are there? And would it be possible to create a 1 classroom of them at the higher level so that they're stationary for 3 years rather than moving them to Highland Park for 1 year and then to another school? We're concerned about the transition years, and this gives this small body of students an additional transition year.
So when you talk about transition years, you're talking about changing complete context. You're talking about schedules, different teachers. Those kids are actually going to be moving with their peers, with their families, with their teachers. They're just changing buildings. So I don't think you have the same transition issues as you would, say, going from a traditional elementary to a middle or traditional middle to a high school. So when you talk about the angst around transition, you're really talking about changing complete context. But in this case, it's the same group of kids. They're just moving, 8 blocks over to the new building. So I'd be less concerned about the transition piece.
And I know that, was it Bond Mill, I believe? They wanted to, in the prior boundary, they wanted to have the 6th graders almost exempt from this and then delay them so that they only had that one move. And I understand what you're saying is they're moving with their friends, their class, their
And also, as my answer to Ms. Jackson, I don't think you really want a 6th grade of only 45 kids in the building. That's really hard to program for also. It's too small of a cohort to really be effective in the middle school.
And we're not looking to make Kenmore, or I guess that would be Oakcrest goes to Kenmore? Rocker Mill?
For 7th and 8th.
For 7th and 8th. We're not looking to make either one of them a 6, 7, and 8. No. I understand what you're saying. As a parent, I guess I'm the complete other spectrum of my colleague here. As a parent, I would want my 6th grader in the middle school environment as a 6th, 7th, and 8th grader. And that's as a parent, because then they learn the school better, they have more opportunities at a higher level rather than being treated as the elementary schooler longer. And I think you have buy-in really from the parents for a longer period of time, because I certainly was more active when I had 3 years in a school than when I had 2 years in a school. And so my question, my dilemma, I guess this will be my own dilemma, is does the different 1 year at a different site, is that a transition that's murky enough for me? Okay, so the other... No,
and so I want to respond to that, Ms. Hathaway, back, because in this situation, the distinction here, as was with, I think when we did that up with the schools in Laurel, Bond Mill, the distinction here is that the whole program is moving. So we have a program that's moving from the Oakcrest facility to the Highland Park facility. So those young people in Oakcrest that are in 5th grade now will have their 6th grade at a different facility, and then for 1 year, and then move to a new facility. And the problem with Kenmore Middle specifically is that we are moving 6th grade there, but for Glenarden Woods and Kenmore Elementary, and it's not large enough to accept any more 6th graders.
Yeah, I knew there had been some discussion about moving a 6th grade population over, but the more I looked at the enrollment sheets, I was not seeing that anywhere. Okay, my other question is with regards to the color coding on the final series of slides. And I understand the color coding is geographic, so it would show the schools that are affected all in the blue are really the schools you can't pull one out of, because those would be the domino schools. Okay, yeah, so I'm thinking slide 12.
Can we go to slide 12 and 13, please?
So, so let's say there's some angst on the color series of yellow. I'm just picking this out. Does that mean all of the yellow columns could be removed from the budget proposal and have the proposal still be workable with everything else? The boundary, I'm sorry. It would help, yeah. It's 13, slide 13 or 14. Keep going.
It's the boundary proposal.
It's the boundary proposal.
This is the budgeting proposal.
And I think that that the color coding would show the Kenilworth and the Yorktown, so that if that's, say, yellow, and the board didn't want to do that, the board could take all of the yellow out of the proposal and not inhibit any of the other recommendations. Is that it?
That is the case for the most part. Again, in some instances, they're not only a boundary change, but a grade structure and a program relocation. So in some cases, it crosses over those boundaries. But in the case, for example, of the Yorktown Rockledge, those are isolated changes that could be
pulled out. Okay, so this is really the option is I really like the blue. I like everything about the blue, and I represent that district. But if I had some angst about the blue shaded cells, then that could really be removed from the proposal and either put on a later discussion or removed entirely without affecting the other.
So Ms. Beck, if I understand what I think you're asking, which I had already addressed to the administration, is that everybody here has concerns about one thing or another and may not necessarily agree with all the proposals that Superintendent Hite has submitted. So I already envision that this is going to be a vote by proposal for each individual. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Take each proposal separately and vote on each one. So I will be entertaining motions for every single one that he has as an individual section.
As an individual color-coded section.
So
is that where you're going with this?
Well, but it depends. So that's why the discussion around the what-ifs is really critical, because so we see that if one thing fails in many of these proposals, other things fail. So, and just because I'm not looking at it right here, I don't know that that's the absolute case with all of the blue, for example.
Right.
So you may agree with all the blue, and that would be fine. But if there's pieces of other sections, you want to vote on one part of the blue, not other part of the blue. That's why I'm going to entertain the motions individually, just to keep it clean and easier for board members to address whatever issues they might have.
Okay. That's. I think that answers where I was going in terms of color coding being geographic, but also being able to pull from the proposal for follow-up or other discussion. Saved by the bell.
Some of your time. Okay, so Dr. Hite, I had a couple of questions on the Yorktown Rockledge and the Heather Hills Kenilworth proposals. So based on tonight, once we've had this discussion, you've been hearing the questions from board members, I'd like to have made available the data, not just around numbers in general, but the enrollment kind of stuff, other than what Dr. Coleman-Potter put in. This is the before and after, those kinds of things. What I mean by that is, for example, the transportation costs that are associated with, at this point, you're saying it's going to be essentially 65 students. You know, that transportation costs, I don't know, $15,000, $20,000.
Right, and we actually have that number because of the short distance. We estimate it to be $556 per child for the students that we're talking about busing from Heather Hills to Kenilworth.
Okay.
For the year.
For the $556 per child.
$556 per child for the entire year.
Okay, and then based on the Yorktown Rockledge change that you have here, we talked consistently about, and I'm not going to ask you to do history lessons as to why we continue to have children passing schools to get to another school. But that being the case, what are the transportation costs associated with, again, it's got to be minimal because we're talking a short distance, but I still think we should know what the transportation costs are associated with that proposal as well. The other question I had on that was, what would happen to the current waiting list for tag-identified students if any one of these proposals for tag centers is not approved? I mean, and you could, of course, use Heather Hills as the example, because even though we talked about the 90 students being comprehensive and tag, and I don't know, I could be wrong, the reality is you don't plan on taking those tag students out of there, do you? Or based on the openings, would you potentially?
No, those students would remain.
Well, okay, let me back up. Let me restructure my question. So the reason I asked that question was because I was trying to get an idea of how many students we're talking about. And to Ms. Johnson's point, they're not about numbers. It's about how we're going to provide them the services that they need. So having said that, if the Heather Hills proposal was not approved, would you be making any adjustments to the current tag students in that school, or proposal for the current tag students in that school?
We cannot, because they are slightly over capacity at 102%.
Okay, so there's nowhere for them to go, right?
Correct.
So they would stay. Okay. All right, and then so back to my original question on the waiting list. What would happen? How many would students still remain on the waiting list if any one of these proposals? Do these proposals eliminate the waiting list for tag identified students?
It does not eliminate. It reduces, but it does.
Because I thought we had about 600. I thought it was about how many?
500 additional seats.
Okay, and does that leave? How many does it leave on the? I know it changes per year, but any idea?
The most recent waiting list had approximately 550, 600 students on the waiting list.
Okay.
There are also a number of students that we believe have not applied because of the low probability of being selected.
Okay.
By increasing the opportunities, we expect to see an increase in the number of students that try and take advantage of those opportunities. So we would expect there to be more students that are trying to avail themselves of that opportunity.
Well, I think that's an important number to know in terms of what your list would look like based on what you have now if things weren't approved. I mean, I think that's critical to know. And then there was one other quick question, I'm sorry. So I've also gotten comments from tag parents who say, you know, they're glad that they're at, and I'm speaking specifically to Heather Hills, that they're glad that they're at Heather Hills. And just so we're clear, there was a question in the public. If you live in a neighborhood and that's your neighborhood school and your child is tag identified, your child goes to that school without lottery. Okay, I just wanted to be clear because some parents didn't think that was the case. Okay, I think I have more questions, but you know, we're going to continue the discussion on the 18th. But I just want to say, if based on the questions that you have gotten from us and the responses, I think it would be helpful if they're posted on the website and sent out so that parents can generate more questions from what they see, if they have any or whatever, and so that everybody's well informed. Okay. That concludes, Dr. Hite, questions from, I'm sorry, Mr. Armwood. I'm sorry. I never ignore you.
I had a fairly simple question on Forestville Military Academy again. Just want to confirm for the record that students who presently attend or stay in the military program will graduate as Forestville Military Academy, and comprehensive students, they will graduate as Forestville High School. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the program will retain its current identification and should remain the dominant program within that building, so that they should be able to maintain their discipline and their culture, I would imagine, and hopefully influence other children who come into that building. But they will remain Forestville Military Academy for those graduates.
That is correct, Mr. Armwood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armwood. Ms. Beck?
What is the cost impact of the Forestville ROTC students being a school within a school rather than a whole school? I know that the Army participates in a cost share with us, so they don't participate on a by student. They just. Oh, I thought they paid.
I thought we were at
some
70%.
component of the staffing. No.
We pay 25% of the salaries of the ROTC instructors.
So the Army pays that?
The
Because
Army
I
pays
know that
25%.
the Air Force pays a different, and
We
the
pay everything
Navy
else.
pays a different.
Right, that came out of last budget.
Okay, so we're not, by creating a school within a school, we're not losing a large share of Army participation because it's a whole school model. Okay.
The services are actually more worried about the budget cuts at the federal level and the maintenance of ROTC.
Right.
Yeah, that's their
Right,
worry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hite. I think that concludes the comments for tonight. Again, do you know when you could have posted on the website the sort of your overview of comments and responses?
We can have them by Monday, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
You're welcome.
All right. That concludes this portion of the meeting, Dr. Hite. I think that brings us to, did I miss something? I think that brings us to...
No, you did not. That brings us to consent agenda, and these are separated items. The first are the regular consent agenda items, 7.1 grant reporting and 7.2 High Point High School FY 2007 science classroom renovations, final acceptance and final payments.
Move to accept 7.1, 7.2.
Thank you. Is there a second? It's been properly moved and second that we accept consent agenda items 7.1 and 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed.
Thank you. The next item is under 8.0 budget consent agenda. This is 8.1, contract with the Institute for Learning for 2011 to 2012.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Thank you, Ms. Waller. Thank you, Ms. Lawson. It's been properly moved in second to approve budget consent agenda item Institute for Learning contract 2011-2012. Call the roll. Oh, you're right. That's right. All in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? One no. Any others? Two noes. Any others? Abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed.
Thank you. Madam Chair, there are no items under non-consent, and so item 10.0, governance unfinished business. These are second reader items. Items 10.1 and 10.2, Forestville Military Academy State Grant, and 10.2, Lago High School State Grant. These are for matching grants for bond for tracks at both of these facilities.
We have a speaker for the retirement incentive, I thought. I thought we were just on.
I did two. I'm sorry. I should have done only one at a time. So item 10.1, Forestville Military Academy State Grant.
Okay.
Move to accept.
It's been properly moved in second that we accept item 10.1 for Forestville Military Academy State Grant. Discussion, Ms. Beck and Ms. Johnson.
Does this mean that the repairs are limited to the 180,000 or not?
Yes, it does. It limits it to a total amount of 180,000.
Each track?
Correct.
And the last track we repaired was Gwynn Park for 400,000.
That's correct.
So we're doing a $180,000 cap repair? How? All right.
It will be, the bond was approved for 90,000 that required a match that was equal
Right.
to the 90,000. And that was assuming that the track could be repaired for $180,000. The reason we're putting the maximum amount of 180 is because we do not have the funds to exceed that amount. We do have a match for the 90,000 in the state bond, and if we cannot find someone that could do that for the amount that's approved, then it cannot happen.
So when will we hear about that? Because I know that Senator Curry had said he got the 180,000 quote from someone on our team, that we could do it for 180. But if we're doing tracks in the 400,000 range, then do you come back to us and say we don't have a bid that comes to the 180? So this is really a contingent approval.
This is a contingent. Actually, it's written into the language of the board action item, and it is. It would have to go out for bid just based on our own purchasing requirements. So it has to go out for bid. So even if there was individuals or an individual who indicated that they could do it for that amount, we would still have to put it out for bid and determine based on those bids whether or not we would award a contract based on the RFP that we put on the street or an individual's ability to do that work. And so this is just approving, quite frankly, a match in the event that we could find a vendor to do the repairs for that amount, understanding that it was the work of our delegation that provided for $90,000 toward the repair for the tracks at Forestville Military Academy and Lago High School.
So you'll be coming back to us at some point to tell us yes or no, we can't.
Yeah, that would be inside of a CIP meeting. We would talk about that. We would put a bid out for the repairs of that track, talk about the scope of that project, and determine whether or not we can award that bid based on the proposals we receive.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Dr. Hite, I just have to ask this quick question. And when you do the RFP, it will be similar or same to any other RFP that we put out for track work, so that safety issues, I mean, you don't have to restructure or reword the RFP based on this amount, do you?
We would have to write it for the scope of
what would be required
a regulation track,
That's where
considering the safety requirements and the inspection and permit requirements necessary to build a track.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And then, so if for some great reason you come back with someone who's willing to do that, you will have made sure that they can do what they've proposed to do to ensure the safety. All right, Ms. Johnson?
So, Dr. Hite, in effect, this is a wish fund that we wish and hope we can find, and if that wish comes true, we then will do a match and get a new track. Yes? No?
I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson.
Yeah, it's about, I just said, it's a wish fund. We wish we could fund for 180 because we can find a vendor to do that, because it does not allow us to do refurbishment to new status or good, excellent status, because the grant is solely for new. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
I hear you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay. Ms. Thompson, call the roll, please.
Mr. Armwood? Aye. Mrs. Beck?
No.
Ms. Boston?
Yes.
Ms. Eubanks?
No.
Ms. Johnson? No. Ms. Waller?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Jacobs?
What's the count? I can't do it.
Right now, it's 5 ayes, 3
Oh,
no.
okay. Well, aye. It doesn't pass anyway. Okay.
Motion passes.
No.
Nope.
Wasn't,
It's,
you need 6, right?
yeah, you have 6.
Oh, we do have 6?
Mm-hmm. It
Oh,
passes.
okay. All right. Okay. Next item, Dr. Hite.
Next item is, that was for 10.1. So the next item is the exact same, but this is 10.2, and this is the same structure for Lago High School state grant.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boston.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Thank you, Ms. Waller, that we accept item 10.1, 10.2, Largo High School State Grant. Call the roll, Ms. Thompson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Call the roll.
Mr. Armwood?
Aye.
Mrs. Beck?
No.
Ms. Boston?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks?
No.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Ms. Jackson? Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mrs. Jacobs?
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to
10.3, track version to board policy, not track as in running track, but tracking, the version to board policy 9360, meetings of the board.
Thank you, Dr. Hite. Colleagues, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. Thank you, Ms. Boston. It's been properly moved and second that we approve item 10.3. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Thank you. Motion passed.
Thank you. 10.4, board policy number 0107, ethics regulation. These recommendations from the policy committee, and they're submitted for board approval.
Thank you,
Move to
Dr.
approve.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. Thank you, Ms. Eubanks. It's been properly moved and second that the board adopts the new ethics regulations, which would be board policy 0107. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any objections, abstentions? Motion pass. Okay. Dr. Hite, I believe that brings us to the Retirement Incentive Program. We have one registered speaker who will speak in public comment forum. We will listen to your comments. You have 3 minutes to present your comments. At the sound of the buzzer, you may finish the sentence that you are on. Only registered speakers may not relinquish any of your time to a registered or another unregistered speaker. Please use titles rather than names. Do not use profanity or derogatory terms, and your adherence to these guidelines will enable public participation process to run smoothly. Mr. Khan.
Before I start, the supplemental agenda says I'm speaking on the election of the board. I am not. I'm speaking to this agenda item. And I also want to congratulate board member Faith Jackson on her acceptance to Harvard, which I see is already emblazoned on her laptop lid. Start me. Thank you. This retirement incentive program is not what it seems. As we found out at the last meeting, it's also, I think, wasteful, immoral, and undermines good labor relations. It purports to be a plan to reduce our population of employees. It is not. It was explained by the administration at the last meeting that this will be funded by replacing those employees with cheaper employees. So we're basically farming out or retiring, pensioning off our most experienced teachers and other employees and replacing them with newcomers who don't have the same experience, don't have the classroom management experience. Maybe that's a good budgetary tactic. It may or may not be a good educational tactic. That's up to you, but at least please know what you're doing here. This is not about reducing positions. If it were, I would have many fewer objections to it. If this were to say, as it seems to be saying for the special ed teachers, if they're still in demand and we need them, let's not do this. Okay, you want to zero out that position if they take this? I don't have any objections to that. Now, there's also a lot of discretion given to the superintendent in this. I see, for example, that the superintendent is required to include other severance benefits. And it lists 2, but there's an unlimited authority of the superintendent without any budgetary restriction on giving additional benefits. We don't know what they are, and I think that the taxpayers need to know that. The selection of people and approval or disapproval is entirely arbitrary. There are no criteria listed. Now, that's not good for labor relations either. There are already a lot of accusations that the superintendent has favorites and he does, some things for people he likes and other things for people he doesn't. I don't know that any of that is true. I certainly hope it's not. But all this can do is exacerbate this problem. Particularly, this is wasteful because not only does it allow double dipping, which is where you retire, the next day you come back to work and you have your pension and your salary, and that may be justified for certain needed areas precisely in special ed, but this allows triple dipping. You come out, you come back the next day with your pension, with your salary, and a bonus of 20% of your pay if the superintendent agrees to that. That's not good. You should keep this 18 months, maybe a year ban on reemployment, and then let them pay a proportional amount back. This money should be used for increasing teachers' pay and other employees' pay, and maybe some money for classroom supplies so the teachers don't have to reach into their own pockets to be able to give a proper education to their kids. Thank you.
Dr. Hite?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next is item 10.5, Retirement Incentive Program. And this program is very similar to the program we instituted a year ago. And that program was designed, as is this one, to mitigate the need for reductions by positions. The criteria for how individuals retire and return are all defined in the state process. So individuals cannot walk out one day, collect an incentive, and then come back and be employed the next day. Those things are defined in the Maryland retirement process. This year it is, while we're not anticipating the numbers of individuals that unfortunately had to be separated from the system as a result of reduction in force, although we're not anticipating that same number, there are categories of positions because of attrition, because of reclassification, because we're shifting monies to schools. There are categories of positions that will be eliminated, and this is designed to really mitigate that need for those individuals to be laid off. If we can find individuals who choose to retire as opposed to laying an individual off, we would much rather take that route. Additionally, we amended this time to include all teachers, all staff members who are in our system. We did make the note that special education may be excluded due to current and future vacancies. In other words, looking inside of that classification, and if there are areas that are hard to staff, then not allowing those individuals this benefit. Additionally, we're opening this to all of our employees based on their salaries. And so this is up to an amount of $20,000, but it would be factored based on the salaries of individuals. So this is being submitted. Individuals would have to be eligible for the normal service retirement from the Maryland State Retirement System, and the application deadline, if this is approved, is midnight February 12th of this year. And so I submit this now for the board's approval. We'll be glad to entertain any questions. And once again, I do want to reiterate that the staffing implications are really designed to mitigate the need for reductions in force or layoffs. And additionally, we did run this by all of the bargaining units, and they are in agreement with that. They would like all individuals in all categories to be considered. However, it is difficult if, in my opinion, if we already have, and I'm going to use hypothetically, 70 vacancies, it's hard to fathom giving individuals an incentive in that same classification to retire when we know right now we have 70 vacancies in that area. So we will look at that within that classification. But other than that, this is an identical program to the program that we instituted last year, really designed once again to help mitigate the need for reductions.
And it's voluntary, right?
And it's voluntary, yes, ma'am.
I was just checking, making sure nobody's being pushed out. Okay. I have Ms. Jackson, Ms. Beck, and Ms. Johnson.
So with the The fact that you said that it includes all persons or all teachers, and then you say that it may not include special ed teachers, so is it a case-by-case basis?
It would be within that classification. So inside of special education, you may have teachers of hearing impaired. You may have teachers of visually impaired. You may have teachers of autistic children. You may have, so there are multiple categories within special education.
Okay, and then, so I understand that that's because it's a critical area, but what about other areas such as foreign languages? So what happens if we lose a significant amount of teachers from those areas?
Yeah, if we are going to be reducing in those areas naturally, so if individuals apply and there is a need to reduce foreign language teachers, then that would be a case that would likely be approved. If, in fact, we have vacancies in foreign language, then it would likely be a case that is not approved. But that's why it has to be case by case. It just can't be a one-size-fits-all application across the system.
So with the current language, it would make it so that you would go through each time and kind of determine which one. Okay, thank you.
This is the same administration that we used a year ago, and we had to look at all positions on a case-by-case basis. And there was one category, I believe there were psychologists, who were not approved because we had a shortage of psychologists.
Dr. Hite, the only thing, just sort of following up with Ms. Jackson's comments, I know last year I voiced a concern about, so reserving the right to approve or deny applications, I mean, that is broad. So, you know, and I'm asking this question from the standpoint of someone challenging if you deny an application. So what do you have in place for that? Like, so when you approve it, you're going to have a checklist that says you meet this criteria, that criteria, that criteria, and based on that, we approve. Because I just don't want, and there won't be a situation where people are approved and then you say, oops, we didn't figure that out right, so I have to send you another letter that says, no, you're not approved anymore.
Yeah, there's a standardized sort of, it was a checklist of certain criteria that we met. What was the salary? What's the classification? How many positions are we reducing in this area? If we did allow this retirement, what would we replace this individual with? Would it help reduce layoffs? So once all those categories checked off, recommended approval to the superintendent, who ultimately made the decision to approve or deny.
Okay.
For folks who did question why they weren't approved, we would tell them the reason.
Right. So you were able to point to
criteria.
something,
correct,
and so that you couldn't say, okay, Gina, you're not approved. Just because. I mean, you can say it's because of this reason, and I can identify the reason that you're telling me. Okay. Ms. Beck?
On the resolution, where it says you cannot seek or accept employment or work in any capacity for a period of 18 months following the separation, unless the superintendent or his designee grants an exception for good cause. What would be an exception for good cause?
If it is hard to staff, if it is, again, a position that is hard to staff.
But that means then you can grant an exception and bring them back?
If we'd look into state law now it would be a certain salary. It wouldn't be at their full salary. It would be at a reduced salary.
But, okay, so that says we'll give them the stipend to leave, or the incentive to leave, and then the superintendent might grant an exception for good cause to bring them back sooner than 18 months. That's what that says.
So, for example, if let's say we granted the incentive and replaced that individual with somebody who then leaves the system, and then we're having trouble finding that replacement, this would again be an exception that we could grant. If that makes sense.
Okay, so that kind of erases, we're not going to approve any special ed because there's exceptions for, but we might need to bring you back.
It's a case-by-case basis.
And so last year, Ms. Hathaway Beck, and I just want to use it because we just went through this process. Right. So we had 600 individuals who took advantage of this, of the retirement incentive program. And to date, I have no individuals who I've had to approve to come back under that situation. In the past, we did have individuals who retired as principals from our district, and the state allowed a special provision that if they worked in a hard-to-staff or school with high poverty numbers, that they can come in at a reduced salary up to a certain amount. And that's why that language is written in the event that there were no other options, we could exercise that.
Or, and Ms. Beck, too, another example would be for subbing. We could bring them back as a sub, a long-term sub or short-term sub.
Oh, we could.
Yes, if the need arose.
Okay. Considering we pay our nurses an additional bump up because they're hard to staff, do the nurses also qualify for the incentive program? Because I know we're short so many nurses. Let's say 20. Let's say we have nurses who want to retire and collect the 20% or the 20% of the bump up, but we're still stuck without nurses.
It would be, they would have the ability to apply. And then we would make that decision based on the vacancies that we currently have and the vacancies that we anticipate.
Okay, so we're talking more than special ed, we're talking nurses as well.
We're talking everyone.
Right.
I mean, across the system, primarily, Ms. Hathaway Beck. So everybody that is in a hard-to-staff area, if they chose to retire, and we knew that we could not or would not likely be able to fill their position, we would operate just as we did a year ago, looking at the checklist.
So it would say providing a salary with a bump up indicates it's hard to fill. We've already acknowledged through the additional pay that this is hard to fill. So that to me kind of quantifies this is hard to fill, and why should we be paying you to leave? I'm sorry.
No,
I agree with the concept.
Yeah, no,
it's just the fairness aspect of.
So look, I'm going to try this from a different perspective. So special education is the language is written out, and special education is actually distinguished because at the moment, we have 70 vacancies in special education. And now we can look at it inside of categories. So there may be places in special, so we may not need hearing impaired teachers. Actually, we may find that we have a lot of applications for hearing impaired.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So inside of special education, we can look at a hearing impaired teacher, hypothetically, may approve that individual, but if someone is in one of those categories where we currently have 70 vacancies, then we would know, no, that's not likely to happen. And that's why special education was carved out, because unlike last year, we're going into this process understanding that there are some areas currently with significant vacancies.
So, Dr. Hite, what might have been better language on that section? Because you could potentially have, to use her example, a nurse say, well, you don't have me listed as maybe excluded, but it probably should have just said, all employees who are eligible for normal service retirement may apply, and that positions will be reviewed based on current and future vacancies for approval. So that covers everybody, special ed, nurses, custodial staff, language.
That's a great recommendation. So how about if we change the language? So how about if we change the language that then speaks to special education specifically, and just change special education, amend that to positions?
I think that makes it easier, because special ed is you know what I mean? That's just one. I think, well, let me get through the list. I'm sorry. Ms. Johnson, you're next.
Dr. Hite, one of the things that has given me concern, first of all, incentive retirement, I think it would be better if it were called early out. Not that early out but incentive retirement or retirement incentive, One of the things that is concerning me is I do not believe the Board of Education has approved with a recommendation from you as to the categories of employees that are deemed, I'm using a former board member's word, critical, or that would not be involved in the early out. I really believe the board needs to have you present to the system the status of the system in terms of numbers and position names, and you decide to say to the board, here are the positions, and of this category of position, we can have this many applied to an early out. However, these position titles, whatever, are critical to the functionality of the system. I honestly believe the board needs to have that. The next piece of this is, if you present a program of early retirement or early out, whatever you want to call it, and you do not set in the parameters of those areas so that people know going in, oh, I think maybe I will retire, only to go into the process with their mindset planning to get a letter that says, no, we're not going to let you go. Because there is no real definitive way to have them understand under what process you use to make that decision. That goes to the concern that it is perhaps personal. It has to have a quantifiable way to manage it. So I would, one, how many positions in whatever categories are you recommending we need to access? That's job one for me. Job two, if you are going to decide, and I clearly agree, special education, we cannot afford to let any of them go, nor can we afford to let any foreign language teachers go. How are we going to manage with that? Because you cannot have category teacher, some can and some can't, because that just happens to be their certification. I really am very concerned that the system is at such a critical point now. We are functioning, but I do not think that we actually need to let any more people go until we have a 2-year run with where we are now this year and looking at next year. Have we done it and gotten it to where it needs to be? You've alluded to the fact we are functioning at better efficiency. I don't think we've had enough time to tell that, because we still have classrooms that don't have a teacher. We still have certain places that there are staff. Retirement incentive is not to give somebody a wad of money so they can go away and vacation or have fun or buy a car or whatever or double dip. It is about the sanctity and safety of the system to get it to function at optimum level. And so I would say to you, until I get some more information that tells me how far down we've pared and what is critical, I cannot support this.
Dr. Hite, before you respond to, I just want to point this out too. I think a distinction has to be made, and so clear it up for me if I'm wrong on this. So early outs by definition generally means you're letting someone go before they're eligible and you're paying them to go, or, and this is everybody who would be eligible for this could retire tomorrow whether we gave them the $20,000 or up to $20,000 anyway, right? I just wanted to point that out, Ms. Johnson, because that's the critical point, that these people who would be eligible for this could walk out whether this was offered anyway, because they're already eligible for retirement. I just wanted to make sure, because early out is different. Okay. I understand. I understand what you're saying. I just wanted to clear, because I think that's an important point, though. Ms. Higgins?
I guess I just want to follow up on Ms. Johnson's comments, because actually somebody's going to be leaving. anyway. And so if we can keep the people who are already in our system and help those who are considering retiring, because we're going to lose somebody anyway because of our numbers and our budgets, right? Okay.
So the alternative to this is layoffs? Yeah. Okay, just checking. Mr. Armwood?
Thank you. I agree with Ms. Johnson insofar as we need to define what are hard-to-staff positions, and it would be nice to have that. I understand what you're trying to do and generally support it, but it also brings to my mind that we have a very poor program, I believe, to develop our employees to fill these hard-to-staff positions. What are we doing to incentivize employees in support positions, for instance, to get certifications in special education and other programs where we have hard-to-staff positions? I suspect we have a very poor record of doing that. Our tuition reimbursement program has been gutted, if my memory is correct, and we have to do more to try to develop our own employees to move up through the system, even to the point of bringing in people from the outside if we have to tuition with commitments. You know, we have to do something to start developing these positions. And we're in a position of always recruiting outside people, rating other systems, and they're rating us. And until we start developing our own internal staff, we're always going to have this hard-to-staff position. And I'd like to ask another question, which is opening up a whole new can of worms. Registered nurses versus licensed practical nurses. Is there any discussion of saving money by starting to move to staff LPNs in our schools versus RNs?
We are doing an analysis of all of the healthcare services that we provide, and we're working with the county health system and the state health system, Mr. Armwood. Ms. Lynch is leading that work, and we're doing an analysis now of what would be the impact if we went to different requirements for nursing. And so we are doing that. And to respond to your first question, one of the reasons we are including $9 million for employee compensation is to really address some of the things that you mentioned. We haven't offered stipends for certification. We haven't offered stipends for advanced degrees. We haven't even offered stipends for national board certification. So we want to begin investing again in what we determine as effective types of skills and traits for all of our teachers, but we have been unable to do that because of our budget situation.
Ms. Jackson?
So I just wanted to, I guess my question was, what was the increase of persons who retired last year under the incentive program compared to years when we didn't offer it?
So we had around 600 retirees last year, and we tend to have around 400 to 450 in a normal year. So I would say probably increased by about 150.
Okay.
And we did actually have some employees as well who did not receive the incentive, but still chose to retire.
And so does that number include that the number of those who didn't receive the
600
incentive?
was, I believe, the number who received the incentive. I think we had total retirees around 700.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Waller?
But, yeah, I'm sorry, but I will come back with exact figures for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I listened to the various comments, and I've heard various constituents say that it's like we're getting rid of our more senior staff. However, I look at it that yes, we are, but we aren't, because so many persons come into the system at a young age. And I feel that this year with the early out with the retirement incentive, with it being across the board, I think it will be more equitable in that bus drivers, maintenance persons, and those persons will be able to take advantage of some type of monies. As Dr. Hite stated, I'm going to use the term the funds would be prorated. And say, for instance, if you have someone that's retiring and they're only getting $10,000, 9 times out of 10, a third of that is going to go to taxes, so they're not really getting a whole lot of money. They're probably going to have to go out and get another job anyway. And certainly, I look forward to the time in the very near future that we are able to offer incentives to our teachers so that they will stay with us in our school system, give them some type of tuition reimbursement, and provide incentives for them, for the board certification teachers, and to keep our teachers. And if this is going to help us get to that, I am supporting this process. And again, like I say, I see our young teachers coming in and they're energized, have great leadership skills. I look at our seniors that have been here 20, 25, 30, 35 years. They are great. They bring a lot to the table. And I hope that we can just balance it off with this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Ms. Boston?
I, too, support this proposal. I think the fact that it's opened up to all our employees this time, and as my colleague, Ms. Waller, said, that our bus drivers, custodians will be able to take advantage of this incentive, especially if we adopt some changes in our transportation. I think this is a good way to give them incentives to go on and retire, because the bottom line is, like one of my colleagues says, people are going to be laid off. So if we can get them an incentive, I think it's a good thing. So I do support this.
Thank you, Ms. Boston. Ms. Beck? I'm entertaining a motion.
I would like to approve, I'd like to move to approve item 10.5, Retirement Incentive Program, with the change in language to the board action summary to eliminate the parentheses describing the special ed exemption. So it would go apply, period. Position category will be determined based on current and future vacancies, including hard-to-staff areas, period.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we approve item 10.5 as amended. Hearing no further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Call the roll, Ms. Thompson. I forgot. I'm sorry.
Mr. Armwood?
Aye.
Mrs. Beck?
Aye.
Ms. Boston?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Yes. Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to 11.0, new business, first reader, renaming of Francis Fuchs Early Childhood Center, Media Center to Rita Manila Media Center.
Thank you, Dr. Hite. Ms. Johnson, can I have a motion, please? To approve.
To make a motion that we approve this first reader recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? It's been properly moved and second that we approve item 11.1. All in favor? Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is item 12.1, FY13 Tax Exempt Municipal Energy Performance Lease Purchase Refinancing. I'm going to ask Mr. Stansky to introduce this item.
Very quickly, in monitoring the interest rates currently, they are at all-time lows. So we have approached a few financial institutions with the idea of refinancing the $90 million that is left on our energy performance bonds. It will save us over the 15 years remaining about $5 million in total. The rates are low and they are attached to the board action summary. The reason it is an emergency, though, is the rates have to be locked in by Monday. And so we ask for your favorable approval and happy to answer any questions you have.
Move to accept.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. Is there a second? It's been properly moved and second that we accept emergency item 12.1, and the administration has demonstrated it as an emergency because we have to lock in rates by Monday. Board is voting tonight. Any discussion, any questions, comments, concerns? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Armwood?
Aye.
Mrs. Beck?
Aye.
Ms. Boston?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Jacobs?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, let's see, did we have any public comment on non-agenda items? I don't think we did tonight. Okay, just want to make sure. Any questions from follow-up items from November? Saying none? Ms. Higgins, may I please have a motion to confirm actions taken in executive session?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Jacobs. The appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom it has jurisdiction, or a personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, to consult with a counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter. The board may also discuss matters that fall within the administrative functions category of the Open Meetings Act. Administrative appointments, all employees, acting interim assignments, administrative transfers, student appeals, and legal matters. I so move.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Is there a second? It's been properly moved and second that we confirm actions taken in executive session today, Thursday, January 5th, 2012. All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. And a motion to...
So moved.
Thank you. Second, adjourn.